Chapter 494. 250,000 Jianghu dollars. Someone in the crowd raised his arm. It was Xue Ling, the son of the Minister of War and a captaincy of the Seven Seas City Army. He was a deputy general and could be considered a high-ranking general. 280,000 Jianghu dollars. Another voice came from a bearded mercenary. No one knew where he came from, but his cultivation was not high, so the shield was useless to him. 500,000 Jianghu dollars. Suddenly, someone in the crowd shouted, drawing everyone's attention. The person who shouted was Ji Shang, the young master of the Heavenly Book Pavilion's Ji residence. Those who knew him would immediately recognize the old man beside him as Ji Lin, the manager of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, one of the most powerful people in the empire. Jin Xiaotang also recognized Ji Shang and smiled. All right, young master Ji Shang bids 500,000 Jianghu dollars. Is there a higher bid? 600,000 Jianghu dollars. The voice came from a young master in embroidered clothes. It was Ouyang Bao, the third son of the Heavenly Book aristocratic family, the Ouyang family. Ouyang Bao? Ji Lin couldn't help but frown as he said in a low voice, "It seems that the Ouyang family is also very interested in this divine governing seal. Shenger, continue to bid. Don't lose to them. We must get this shield." "Yes, Grandpa." Ji Shang immediately raised his voice and shouted, 700,000 Jianghu dollars. The two aristocratic families began to challenge each other, and the rest could only remain silent. After all, the Empress had spent a lot of money to invite the Ji residents and the Ouyang family to Lanyan City. The Ministry of Revenue had even allocated a total of 8 million Jianghu dollars to the Ji residents, while the Ouyang family only received 4 million Jianghu dollars. In order to win over these Heavenly Book aristocratic families, Qin Yin had spent a lot of money. Furthermore, she had given them money and titles of nobility. Ouyang Bao narrowed his eyes. The servant beside him looked at him and seemed to think that the price was too high. However, Ouyang Bao ignored the servant's gaze and continued raising his arm, 1 million Jianghu dollars. Continue bidding. Ji Lin narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists. Yes. Ji Shang continued to shout at the top of his lungs, 1,500,000 Jianghu coins. No matter how one looked at it, Ji Shang was a prodigal son. However, Ji Lin only narrowed his eyes and did not speak. This price was still within his acceptable range. If he could comprehend something from the divine seal, he might be able to surpass the earthly book and write a heavenly book. When that time came, not to mention 1.5 million, even 3 million would be worth it. In the end, when 1.5 million was shouted, Ouyang Bao felt a little guilty. His face was covered in sweat. After wiping it with his sleeve, he gritted his teeth and shouted, 1.6 million. He didn't have that much money anymore. This shout was just to boost his morale. Ji Shang sneered and raised his arm. 2 million Jianghu coins. The scene was silent. Everyone was frightened. No matter how high the value of a level 6 Imperial Divine Seal was, it could not be so high. After all, it was just an engraving of a passive ability. If it could be sold for 1 million, it would already be the real price. If it could be sold for 2 million, it would already be an inflated price. This time, Ouyang Bao did not say anything and sat down dejectedly. Jin Xiaotang waited for a while and smiled happily. It's settled. Young Master Ji Shang of the Ji residence has bid 2 million. Please follow me to the backstage for the transaction. Ji Shang nodded and followed Jin Xiaotang in high spirits. However, the auction house was filled with boos. Spending 2 million on a lousy shield, I think he's either rich or stupid, a jealous person said. As expected of the Heavenly Heart Pavilion's Ji residents. They are rich and overbearing. It is said that the family head, Ji Lin, can obtain tens of thousands of Jianghu dollars from the Empress just by writing a book. That young master Ji Shang is young and handsome, and he can actually write a spiritual book. It would be great if I could marry him. The Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce is indeed powerful. They can even get the work of a king's sealer. It seems like the Dragon Search Chamber of Commerce is going to lose. Sigh. Jin Xiaotang's breasts are getting more and more mature. I really want to touch them. In the afternoon, a group of members of the Chamber of Commerce rode fast horses into the Longdan army camp. Jin Xiaotang dismounted and happily entered Lin Muyu's room. Her bell-like laughter bloomed. Brother Yu, guess how much the Imperial Divine Seal Shield was sold for? How much? Lin Muyu asked with a smile. You guess. 500,000? That's too low. 1 million? It's still too low. 5 million? Lin Muyu could not close her mouth. Higher, Jin Xiaotang said with a smile. Don't tell me it's 2 million. Lin Muyu was pleasantly surprised. You guessed it right. It's 2 million. Jin Xiaotang giggled. Lin Muyu stood up from her seat happily and threw Jin Xiaotang into her arms. The girl was so scared that her heart was in a mess. When Lin Muyu successfully caught her, she jumped down from Lin Muyu's arms and said with a smile, Brother Yu, we will definitely win today's auction house battle. It is said that the Dragon Search Chamber of Commerce's auction house is deserted today. There are not many people at all. That's naturally the best. Lin Muyu squinted and said, the problem now is. Ji Lin is the manager of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, and the Ji residence is a famous residence in the Seven Seas province. Ji Lin and Tang Lan are also very close. With the friendship between Tang Lan and Ji Lin, maybe the Dragon Search Chamber of Commerce will sell the tool embryo of the Heavenly Book inscription soon. Yes, I am also worried about this problem. Jin Xiaotang sat on a seat at the side, crossed her white legs, and said, the gate of Heavenly Imperial Army has reopened, and the power of heaven and earth has returned to the Shattered Cauldron realm. Those aristocratic families of the Heavenly Book are like seedlings that have dried up for thousands of years, longing for the rain and dew of the Empress, eager to rise. Therefore, during this period of time, the price of the tool embryo of the Heavenly Book will definitely rise. We have to stock up some goods as soon as possible to keep up with the changes. I have already bought a large batch of the mysterious gold powder, mysterious silver powder, mysterious iron powder, and mysterious copper powder used for the materials of the Heavenly Book. As for the tool embryo needed for the Heavenly Book, I have also bought a batch of goods from the low-grade tool embryo to the top-grade tool embryo. Perhaps, Brother Yu. She wanted to say something but stopped. Lin Muyu couldn't help but smile. If you have any ideas, just say it. Jin Xiaotang pursed her red lips, as if she had made a huge decision, and said, perhaps we can take out a large sum of money to train the experts of the Heavenly Book inscription, let them provide the finished tool embryo of the Heavenly Book to the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce, and then sell it at a high price. However, now, anyone who can write human books and spiritual books will rush to the Heavenly Book Pavilion, and it will be difficult for the Chamber of Commerce to attract talents. This is not urgent. Lin Muyu sat down and said leisurely, anyway, all the funds of the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce are in your hands, and I have given you full authority to manage it. You do as you see fit, I believe in your ability. Jin Xiaotang pouted her small mouth, as if she was acting coquettishly, and said, but I am not even 20 years old, I am still a child. I always need someone to rely on, and I need encouragement. Lin Muyu was speechless for a while, then, do your best. Try your best to attract more talents who can write heavenly books to join the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce. I believe that Xiao Yin will also agree with us to do so. Yes, I understand. Jin Xiaotang stood up confidently, and said with a smile, then I will return to the Chamber of Commerce to continue with my work. Oh right, Brother Yu, are you still continuing with your inscription? Xiaotang knows that you are a genius. If you can inscribe a level 7 god-slaying inscription, Xiaotang can guarantee that you can sell it for a sky-high price of more than 5 million, so, do your best. Yes, I will, go. Okay. Looking at Jin Xiaotang's departing figure, Lin Muyu could not help but feel joy in his heart. So the inscription was really that valuable. It was a pity that the success rate of his inscription was very low. The success rate of the Divine Imperial Seal was only about 5%, and there was only one finished product out of 20 tools. The success rate of the God-slaying inscription was still 0%, and there was not a single finished product. But the good news was that his understanding of inscription was getting deeper, and his Yi-Hai's response to the inscription formation was getting stronger. Especially these 2 days, he had a strong premonition that the inscription technique was going to have a breakthrough. Late at night, the brush was not stopped. Sha-sha, pieces of tool powder fell from Lin Muyu's inscription pen. His determined face was full of calmness, and he meticulously inscribed the God-slaying inscription on the armor. Between his fingers was a faint king's fighting flame, and in his Yi-Hai, a huge inscription pen was floating up and down. The mind pen goes out to sea. This was the spiritual power that Fuxi's heavenly book mantra had condensed in his heart. A trickle of sweat rolled down his cheeks, and gently splashed on the tool. Lin Muyu suddenly stopped. He felt a powerful force rising from his Yi-Hai. Immediately after, he looked up to the sky, only to see an indigo ray of light descending from the vault of heaven. In the sky, a giant golden brush descended from the sky, directly seeping into his Yi-Hai, illuminating the entire ocean of Yi-Hai. And this process was completed in a few short seconds. "Master, are you all right?" Outside, Wei Chao's voice came. He was on duty today, and Bai Yin had gone to sleep. "I'm fine," Lin Muyu replied. He could not help but feel happy. This sign already showed that he had really broken through, and entered the Holy Brush Amaterasu, realm of Fuxi's heavenly book mantra. He slowly sat down, and took out another shield to inscribe. Not long after, the shield broke, and he did not succeed. "Continue, inscribe again." It broke again, and he changed to another one. The golden holy brush in his Yi-Hai finally seemed to be summoned, and slowly condensed between Lin Muyu's fingers. Suddenly, his whole body trembled, and a strange scene appeared in his Yi-Hai. Countless figures of God-level masters flew across his mind, and this time, the brush moved like a dragon. In the blink of an eye, a perfect God-slaying inscription appeared in front of him, and with a hua, a faint light rose. Success. Chapter 495. The figures of emperor gods, divine kings, and ultimate gods flew past his mind like rolling quicksand. Lin Muyu seemed to have gone through a huge ordeal as he broke out in a cold sweat. His clothes were soaked in the blink of an eye. The whole process of carving seemed to be out of his control. The moment the carving of the seal formation was completed, his spiritual sense suddenly flew out involuntarily and directly entered the seal formation. Swoosh! His spiritual sense condensed into a body. He was still wearing the white robe Imperial Forest armor. He was standing at the foot of the seal formation, and the formation under his feet was glowing faintly. "Where is this?" he muttered to himself in confusion. At this moment, a faint voice came from the void where the seal formation was located. "Lin Muyu. Lin Muyu, I'm here." "Who are you?" Lin Muyu raised his hand and pulled out the star's sword as he looked at the dark chaotic space with vigilance. There was no end to the surroundings, or it should be said that he couldn't see anything at all. There was only darkness and the profound formation under his feet. Lin Muyu suddenly felt a sense of claustrophobia, and his spirit was quickly approaching the edge of collapse. Whoosh! Suddenly, the light of the profound formation exploded and rays of golden light shot up to the sky. Just when Lin Muyu raised her head to look, she saw an old man in a green robe descending from the sky. His body kept changing in size, and in the blink of an eye, he seemed to have covered the entire sky. Behind his body, there was a faint green divine dragon that was swallowing clouds and spitting out mist. The old man's black eyes shot out a ray of divine light, causing Lin Muyu to have a feeling that she had no choice but to submit to him. However, Lin Muyu didn't know who he was and was unwilling to kneel. He stood still under the pressure of his divine power. The king's battle flame surged around his body, and the star's sword was placed on the ground with a clang. He maintained his standing posture, and the twin martial souls were forced out. In the whistling sound, they disintegrated and fused, turning into a 7 luminaries sword that floated around his body. The old man looked at him with his black eyes and said, Lin Muyu, it was you who opened the heavenly book and reopened the heavenly imperial gate, preventing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth from being exclusively enjoyed by the gods of the heavenly realm. As the former ruler of the three realms, I should be thanking you, but your cultivation is too low, you can't bear my power at all. Lin Muyu looked straight at him. Who are you and why did you send me to this place? The old man chuckled and said, the gods used to call me Taihao, and some called me Huangxi, but my original name should be Fuxi. Lin Muyu, you are a human from the east of my plane. In a sense, you are my descendant. Fuxi. Lin Muyu's body trembled. He never thought that he would be able to see a legendary figure. Was this kind-looking old man in front of him the legendary Fuxi? He couldn't help but kneel on the ground, holding the hilt of his sword, and said piously, Lin Muyu pays his respects to Fuxi. Fuxi smiled, I have already ascended to the heavens beyond heaven and no longer care about the matters of the three realms. The battle of the gods in the universe has long been beyond my reach. What you saw was a trace of divine sense that I left in Fuxi's heavenly book. Child, since you have opened the heavenly book, then you are my fated person. The fact that you can see me means that you have already comprehended the holy brush Amaterasu. You are a talented genius. I only hope that you can unlock the mystery of the last 3 volumes of the heavenly book as soon as possible. After obtaining the divine power of the heavenly book, you must remember to treat the common people with kindness. Remember my words, there is only one sentence to unlock the seal of the heavenly book. When the moon is full, with the power of a man, he can reach the other side in one move. He is the owner of the heavenly book. As he said this, the image of Fuxi slowly dissipated, and the light of the formation gradually dimmed. Lin Muyu's spiritual sense suddenly returned to his body. Ah! He let out a soft cry. He felt as if all the energy in his body was being sucked dry, and this energy was continuously gathering in the shield in front of him. In an instant, the light grew brighter. Now was the time to embed the gemstones. The god-slaying seal needed to be embedded with 2 stones. One was a divine crystal, and the other was a Shura stone. The Shura stone was easy to get, it could be bought for 5,000 Jining coins, but the divine crystal was one of the best in the world. Fortunately, there were 3 divine crystals left in Qin Bing's tomb, so he could use one now. When the 2 gemstones were embedded in the shield, the entire god-slaying seal was instantly activated. A blood-red wave enveloped the surface of the shield, and the god-slaying seal was completely completed. Lin Muyu sat down leisurely. At least half of her physical strength and combat energy had been absorbed by the shield. As expected, a level 7 engraving was definitely a physical activity. It required the engraver's own strength to be sealed in the engraving in order to form the formation. Wei Chou, come in, Lin Muyu said. Wei Chou pushed the door open and entered. He said respectfully, Commander, what are your orders? Bring a few dozen people and personally hand this shield to Jin Xiaotang. Yes. What time is it now? There's still about 2 hours until dawn. All right, I'm going to sleep. No one is to disturb me. Yes. This was a very deep sleep. In the dream, figures kept appearing one after another. Finally, Fuxi appeared again. He only smiled at Lin Muyu, but didn't say a word. In the dream, Lin Muyu softly murmured the words Fuxi left behind. When the moon is full, with the power of a man, he can reach the other side with a single step. He is the owner of the heavenly book. What did this mean? She didn't understand at all. When she woke up, it was already afternoon. Wei Chou brought over a sumptuous lunch. He ate nearly 2 wild pheasants. This made Wei Chou secretly laugh. Commander's appetite is getting better and better. Lin Muyu picked up a cup of wine and drank it in one gulp. She said, training consumes physical strength. Wei Chou, how's your training of the diamond body? Wei Chou said shamefully, I'm useless. I've only trained to the 2nd level. Not bad. Take your time. Yes. At this time, another shocking wave was set off in Lanyan City. The Purple Flower Chamber of Commerce released news that they would be selling a shield with a level 7 god-slaying seal in 3 days. For a moment, the entire city was shocked. Heavenly Book Pavilion, Ouyang Manor. Bang! Ouyang Bao slammed his palm on the table and said with a pale face, "Damn, which freak could carve a god-slaying seal? My god, this is too exaggerated." Ouyang, who couldn't help but laugh, "Third brother, don't be anxious. I'm guessing that the person who carved the god-slaying seal is also the same person who carved the divine governing seal. These 2 items were carved by the same person." Ouyang Long, who was dressed in white and had an elegant demeanor, smiled faintly and said, "A divine commanding seal embryo can be sold for a sky-high price of 2 million Jianghu dollars. I wonder how much Jin Xiaotang is going to sell it for." Ouyang Bao said, "Our Ouyang residence's wealth is incomparable to the Ji residence and the Zhong residence. This divine governing seal will most likely fall into the Ji residence's hands." At this time, the door opened with a creak, and Ouyang Ping walked in. His eyes were shining, and in terms of spirit, it was unknown how many times stronger he was than his 3 sons. "Father." Dragon, Tiger, and Bao stood up and bowed respectfully. Ouyang Ping said, "You all know?" "Yes." Ouyang Long said, "The news of a level 7 god-slaying seal has spread throughout Lanyan City and even the 4 provinces in the north." "Yes." Ouyang Ping's eyes were solemn. The ancestors left a prophecy that the one who wields the god-slaying seal will wield the Book of God. The secrets of the Book of God and the Book of God are hidden in the god-slaying seal. If we can obtain this divine slaying seal and study it, it may be of unexpected help to us when we inscribe the Book of God. However, with Jin Xiaotang's shrewdness and the strength of Lin Muyu behind her, I'm afraid the price of this divine slaying seal will be unaffordable. So, I need to discuss this with you." Ouyang Bao said, "Father, if you have something to say, just say it." Ouyang Ping nodded and said, "Just yesterday, the Cloud Monarch Su Muyun sent someone to discuss with me. The Cloud Monarch residence needs our Ouyang residence's strength. As long as we agree to serve the Cloud Monarch residence, we will be able to obtain sufficient help from the Cloud Monarch. I think the Cloud Monarch residence can still afford 20 million Jianghu coins. After all, his 1,000 Victories merchant house is one of the top merchant houses in Lanyan City." Ouyang Long's eyes turned cold, and he said, "Father, don't tell me, you want to serve the Cloud Monarch residence?" We came to Lanyan City on the orders of Her Highness the Empress. If we pledge allegiance to Yunzhong Wangfu, I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Once Her Highness the Empress investigates, our Ouyang residence won't be able to bear the consequences." "I know." Ouyang Ping waved his hand and said, "My cooperation with the Cloud Monarch is also carried out in secret. The premise is that the Ouyang residence must sell half of the Book of Spirit, Book of Earth, Book of Heaven, and even Book of God to the Cloud Monarch residence, and the price will be the same as the market price." "Oh." Ouyang Bao was stunned, and he said, "What does the Cloud Monarch mean? Does he want to hoard the Heavenly Book weapon embryo?" "I think so." "Why does he want to hoard the Heavenly Book weapon embryo?" "The Heavenly Book weapon embryo is extremely powerful. Could it be that he..." "Bao, Ouyang Ping's expression became stern as he said, "Don't say things that you shouldn't say. Yunzhong Wang has his own plans, and it's not something that people like us can figure out. We only need to remember that Yunzhong Wang is just a kind of cooperation. We are loyal to Her Highness the Empress. Everything we are doing now is only for the sake of the Ouyang family's rapid rise." "Yes, father." The 3 sons raised their heads together. Ouyang Ping's eyes flashed with a trace of uneasiness, and his heart was in turmoil. Lanyan City seemed to be calm, but who knew how much turbulence was hidden in the shadows? In the past few days, there were only 2 topics of discussion in the entire Lanyan City. One was the deity slaying seal, and no one knew where the deity came from to engrave this kind of artifact that could only be engraved by a divine sealer. The other topic was the Book of Heaven. Countless geniuses in the Heavenly Book Pavilion were working hard to engrave the Book of Heaven. Within 3 days, there were already 4 local books produced. Lan Yen City could be said to be full of talents, as if another golden age was about to arrive. Chapter 496. The fullness of the moon is like the power of a man. The one who can reach the other shore in one move is the owner of the heavenly book. The moonlight shone on the courtyard with a chill. Lin Muyu stood beside the huge millstone, and the golden Fuxi heavenly book was placed above it. The heavenly book was blank, and the last 3 volumes were just wordless heavenly books. Lin Muyu kept repeating the words that God Emperor Fuxi had left for him, but he could not understand the mystery behind it. From Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi, he learned that although Prince Huai, Qin Bing, was a divine sealer 4,000 years ago, he did not have any higher achievements. This was enough to prove that although Qin Bing had the Fuxi heavenly book, he did not understand the last 3 volumes of the wordless heavenly book. He slowly covered the heavenly book with his palm, and his spirit sense lingered around the king's combat flame, slowly seeping into the heavenly book. Suddenly, the heavenly book seemed to produce a huge suction force, and it suddenly sucked in Lin Muyu's spirit sense and power. Whoosh! His eyes suddenly lit up, and he had already entered a mysterious domain formed by the heavenly book. It was as if he was standing in the universe of stars. There was a void under his feet, and there were thousands of stars above his head. Those stars were glowing with a dazzling light, and they were burning their lives to release powerful energy. There was also a bright sun above his head, like the sun in the middle of the sky. Where is this? Lin Muyu looked around in confusion. However, at this moment, a golden light suddenly appeared under his feet, and his king's combat flame was completely sucked in. No matter how he struggled, he could not break free. The fiery red king's combat flame rushed out and left his body, fusing with the golden light, forming a golden liquid that flowed out. There seemed to be an invisible circular ditch in the void, and Lin Muyu's king's combat flame gathered and flowed far away. Not long after, the golden energy plasma converged together and rose into a raging flame. What happened? The aura in Lin Muyu's body quickly began to fill up, but his legs were extremely weak. His feet could not be pulled out from the golden energy plasma, so he could only move along this circle with a radius of over 100 meters. And at this moment, the one furthest from him in the entire circle suddenly erupted with light, and a golden key energy light rose up, slowly turning. Key? He was suddenly enlightened. Could it be that this key was the way to unlock the seal of Fuxi's heavenly book? Fuxi said with a face full of smiles, Lin Muyu, my descendant, I did not expect you to enter the golden pool so quickly. It seems that you are indeed fated with the heavenly book. The key of the heavenly book has appeared. As long as you can obtain the key of the heavenly book, you will be able to unlock the seal of the heavenly book. However, you must remember, every time you enter the golden pool of the heavenly book, you only have one chance to leave the golden pool under your feet. If you are unable to obtain the key of the heavenly book, your spiritual perception will be sent out of the heavenly book. After saying that, regardless of whether Lin Muyu had anything to say, God Emperor Fuxi's divine body quickly dissipated, turning into a golden light rain that fell among the stars. What the hell? Lin Muyu frowned. The key of the heavenly book was not far away. It should be very easy to obtain. Therefore, she took off and walked along the golden pool. However, after walking for half a minute, she realized that the key of the heavenly book was actually moving as well. The golden key was actually moving parallel to the center of her circle. F***ck, Lin Muyu was a little embarrassed. He was obviously toying with her. In that case, there was only one way to obtain the key of the heavenly book, and that was to jump over. After measuring the distance with her eyes, the golden pool was gradually enlarging. The key of the heavenly book was already about 200 meters away from her. With a low shout, the fiery red king's combat flame spun rapidly around her body. She stepped on the golden pool and soared into the sky with a swoosh. She used about 80% of her strength. However, the moment she left the golden pool, Lin Muyu realized that something was wrong. The speed at which she leaped through the air was too fast. In a flash, she had already left the boundary of the golden pool. She could only watch as the key of the heavenly book slipped past her eyes. Failure. The surrounding space began to distort abruptly. Thousands of rays of starlight surged forth and bombarded Lin Muyu's spiritual sense body. It was excruciating pain and directly sent him out of the heavenly book domain. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at his hands and feet. He was fine. It was just that his spiritual body felt very tired. It seemed that entering the domain of the heavenly book consumed a lot of spiritual power. However, there was still at least 60% of his spiritual power that could be used. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and carefully calculated the fact that she had used 80% of her strength. Perhaps, she could obtain the key of the heavenly book with 40% of her strength. Therefore, she covered the heavenly book with her palm again and concentrated. After about 10 minutes, she finally entered the domain of the heavenly book again. The king's combat flame in her body continuously entered the heavenly book and gathered into the golden pool. The key of the heavenly book also appeared in the distance. It was glowing with a dazzling light as if it was mocking Lin Muyu. Come on. Lin Ji. Lin Muyu silently cheered herself on. Her body slowly sank and the king's combat flame around her quickly revolved. This time, she used about 40% of her strength. She leaped and went straight for the key of the heavenly book. In the gentle breeze, the key of the heavenly book was getting closer and closer. However, just as Lin Muyu was about to reach it, the scene in front of him suddenly stretched out. That's right. The distance that was originally at most half a meter away from the key of the heavenly book was instantly stretched to nearly 100 meters. He could only watch from afar as the key of the heavenly book left him. F***CK. What the F***CK? Lin Muyu cursed angrily. The 9 heavenly stars sent him out again. This was the second time she entered the domain of the heavenly book. This time, she had almost exhausted all of her spiritual power. Lin Muyu could not help but feel a little disappointed. The key of the heavenly book was clearly within her reach, but it flew so far away the moment she was about to get her hands on it. It was as if the scale of the map had shrunk in an instant. What did this mean? The fullness of the moon is like the power of a man. The one who reaches the other shore in one step is the master of the heavenly book. The fullness of the moon is like the power of a man. The one who reaches the other shore in one step is the master of the heavenly book. He repeated the words left behind by Fuxi. Suddenly, his heart lit up. The fullness of the moon and the power of a man. These two sentences were equivalent to telling him that the size of the golden pool depended on his king's combat flame to fill it up. In fact, the stronger the total amount of king's combat flame, the bigger the golden pool. This should be the meaning. As for reaching the other shore in one step, it meant that he had to reach the other shore in one jump. Ha 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 ha. I see. Ha ha ha. In an instant, Lin Muyu could not help but laugh out loud. The golden pool was formed by the gathering of his king's combat flame. The secret of the heavenly book lay in the appropriate amount of strength. In other words, he had to reach the perfect diameter of the golden pool in one jump. Otherwise, it would be futile no matter how many times he jumped. This meant that the control of strength had to be precise. Not even the slightest difference could be tolerated. That's right. The maximum value of his strength was equal to the circumference of the golden pool. The strength used for this jump could only be the diameter. He understood this multiplier too well. It was the legendary pi. This jump could not be more or less. It could only be a multiplier of the diameter divided by the circumference. In other words, 1/pi equals 1/3141592 equals 318.30989% of his strength. In an instant, Lin Muyu was secretly pleased. Fortunately, his mathematics was not bad. Otherwise, how could he survive in this mysterious world? No wonder Qin Bing did not grasp the true mystery of Fuxi's heavenly book. It was because he did not know what pi was. It was impossible for a bad student to fall behind others step by step. This fully proved the importance of knowledge. However, it was easier said than done. It was already very strong to control his strength at 31%. Not to mention, he had to be precise to the last few decimal places. Forget it. His soul power was empty. He would sleep and recover his soul power first. The next day, he only woke up at noon. His soul power was full and he could continue trying. However, this time, Lin Muyu did not rush into the heavenly book domain like a hothead. Instead, after eating lunch, he asked Wei Chou and the others not to disturb him. Then, he stood in the courtyard of the main hall of the camp. After standing still, he called out softly, "Lulu, come out." Swoosh! The beautiful female elf official flew out of Yi. She flapped her crystal wings and said with a smile, "Brother, what can I do for you, Lulu?" Lin Muyu smiled slightly. "Can you help me measure my strength ratio? I will increase my strength." "Lulu, can you help me tell the percentage of strength that I have increased?" "Accurate to 2 decimal places. Is that okay?" Sure." Lulu was originally a string of data. Moreover, she lived in Lin Muyu's Yi. Naturally, she was more clear about his strength level. With a soft shout, the king's fighting flame surged, blowing the white imperial forest cloak. Lin Muyu stood in the courtyard like a statue. His strength slowly increased. When it reached about 30%, he stopped and asked, "How much is it now?" Lulu blinked and said, 3,324%. "Okay." Lin Muyu slowly reduced his strength and asked, "What about now, 2,847%? Lulu said. Lin Muyu frowned and slowly raised his qi. He increased his fighting qi a little and asked, "What about now?" 3,102%. Lulu said. Lin Muyu silently moved his qi and slightly increased the king's fighting flame. He asked again, "What about now?" 3272%. This was too difficult. Lin Muyu's control of strength was already very good. It was just that he could not reach the level of perfection. He repeated this for a long time. After nearly 4 hours, when his strength reached 3,181%, it was accurate to 1 decimal place. Thus, he called Lulu back and stopped his strength at this point. He repeatedly familiarized himself with the feeling of this level of strength. 10 minutes later, he called Lulu again and lifted it up again. He searched for the feeling of the previous level of strength. The king's fighting flame danced all over his body. He smiled and asked, "How much is it now?" "Wow, amazing," Lulu stuck out her tongue and said, 3,187%. It seemed that he could only control it to 1 decimal place. He was temporarily unable to reach the last 2 places. Done. Lin Muyu nodded. He could try again. Chapter 497. Swoosh. His spiritual perception turned into his body and appeared in the heavenly book territory. The battle energy around him quickly surged out and formed a golden pool. The key of the heavenly book also slowly appeared and rotated slowly in the distance. It was still mocking Lin Muyu, the loser who kept fighting after losing. "One more time, don't rush." Lin Muyu comforted his repeatedly injured heart and began to increase his aura to find the feeling just now. He increased his battle energy to about 318% and suddenly leaped forward. Whoosh! The strong wind flew past his ears and the key of the heavenly book was getting closer and closer. Just as he was about to touch it, the things in front of him suddenly stretched out a lot, but they were still within his control. Just as Lin Muyu was about to reach out, the surrounding scenery stretched out again. Suddenly, the key of the heavenly book appeared nearly 50 meters away. Suddenly, a million curses ran through Lin Muyu's heart. This setting was too abnormal. He exited the heavenly book territory in disappointment and took a deep breath. Did he really have to be accurate to the last 2 decimal places to get the key of the heavenly book? A sense of frustration lingered in his heart. It was not that he did not want to work hard, but with his current cultivation, his control of power had not reached perfection. He could not sensitively capture 001% of power. At this moment, Lulu and Yi suddenly spoke. Brother, do you still remember the 5% divine power that the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor gave you? Lulu remembered that the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor's control of power was not just 1%, he could even achieve 001%. Therefore, Lulu judged that a godly state master's control of power must be above 001%. However, the 5% divine power of the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor is too weak and not enough for you to achieve all this. Why don't you refine a godhead fragment and see if you can integrate more divine power into it? Oh. Lin Muyu's heart lit up. Lulu's reminder was too timely. He was overjoyed and said, "Okay, I'll try." Yes, yes. He took out one of the 2 godhead shards from his cosmos sack. This shard was glowing with a fiery red light, just like a gemstone. However, how could a mortal see through the power contained within it? Hua. Summoning her cauldron, Lin Muyu surrounded it with starfire as she tossed out the godhead shard. Instantly, the fiery red shard let out a buzzing sound as if it was resisting the godhead shard. Lin Muyu held the star's sword with both hands and stood in the treasure-refining cauldron. Her eyes were closed, and her cloak fluttered in the strong wind. No, the resistance from the godhead fragment is getting stronger and stronger. It seems that the treasure-refining cauldron can't control this kind of divine power at all. Damn it. Gritting her teeth, Lin Muyu summoned the god-binding chains and the 7 luminaries' holy gourd at the same time. She infused her dark force into the cauldron to suppress the energy contained in the godhead fragment. Wang, 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 the flames became more and more intense, and the whole treasure-refining cauldron trembled. Lin Muyu closed her eyes and continued to use her king's fighting flame to strengthen the power in the treasure-refining cauldron. She tried to increase the temperature of the godhead fragment. To refine a fire attribute godhead fragment, she must have a higher temperature and stronger power. After all, the law of the world was to bully the weak. If the opponent was not as strong as the opponent, there was no need to talk about refining it. However, the power in the godhead fragment was very strong, and it continued to fight against the treasure-refining cauldron. After 6 hours, the sky was already dark, but the godhead fragment was still not refined. Instead, a layer of spiritual energy on the surface of the godhead fragment was slowly peeling off. Immediately, Lin Muyu was secretly delighted. Is she going to succeed? But at this moment, a figure slowly gathered in the flames. It was a white-bearded elder with a ruthless expression. He roared angrily, "Little bastard, you want to usurp this godly monarch's power with just you?" Then, the old man swung his palm at Lin Muyu, and the flames surged up to the sky. Heavens, this is also a godhead fragment of a god king, a middle god. Lin Muyu groaned inwardly. There was no turning back now, so she had no choice but to fight it head-on. She raised her arm and pushed out the power of the 6 luminaries' heavenly tribulation. Boom! The power of both sides surged, and there was a loud boom. The treasure-refining cauldron finally could not withstand the power of heaven and earth, and it suddenly exploded. The flames swept out in all directions, destroying all the pavilions and waterside pavilions around the courtyard. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Lin Muyu spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered a few steps back. She was in a sorry state, and she was already seriously injured. The godhead fragment slowly fell to the ground with a ding, but the energy on its surface had already begun to dissipate. Holy shit, it looks like the moment the godhead king unleashed his will inside the godhead fragment to attack, it also destroyed the godhead fragment's defense. It's time to refine it again. Enduring the pain, Lin Muyu stood up again and held the cosmic sword. With a thought, the treasure-refining cauldron reformed. It was also at this time that Wei Chao's voice came from outside, "Master, what's wrong?" "It's nothing. Stand guard outside, and don't let anyone get close to me." "Yes." The godhead fragment sizzled in the treasure-refining cauldron. It was burned red, but it still seemed to be struggling to resist the refinement. The flames on both sides surged and fought against each other. The godhead fragment's ferocious look appeared again. His face was a little pale, but he controlled the flames with both hands and laughed loudly. What, you still want to test your God King Grandpa's invincible divine power? Come, I'll let you know how the word death is written. Motherf asterisk cur, Lin Muyu cursed loudly. Motherf asterisk cur. The Godhead fragment was even more furious. As he cursed, he exerted all his strength to counterattack Lin Muyu. At this time, the Fushi's heavenly book on the broken stone block behind Lin Muyu suddenly shone brightly. It rustled and flipped through the golden pages as if it was reacting. Could it be that it was attracted by the power in the Godhead fragment? Lin Muyu was a little stunned. He freed his hand and pressed it on the Fushi's heavenly book that was flipping through the pages. Swoosh, a milky white divine power gathered on the heavenly book and flowed into Lin Muyu's palm. Lin Muyu's body trembled. How could a mortal withstand such a mighty divine power? He quickly pulled his hand away, but the divine power from the Fushi's heavenly book had already flowed into his palm. A few seconds later, as if sensing the divine power from the heavenly book entering his body, another divine power in his body surged and fought back. It was the divine power left behind by the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. The two divine powers immediately fought against each other with Lin Muyu's body as the battlefield, neither giving way to the other. At that moment, Lin Muyu wanted to die. He growled, "Are you kidding me? I'm about to be counterattacked by the Godhead fragment, and you guys are still fighting?" Suddenly, the two divine powers seemed to feel guilty. One flowed into his left hand and the other into his right hand, and they fought together. Lin Muyu pushed both of his palms out at the same time. He growled, "Melt." What? The divine king's body trembled. His strength was immediately suppressed. His face was filled with horror. "You little brat, who are you?" I can't accept this. The heavenly book's divine power, the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor's divine power, the 7 glorious stars transformation. The 3 powerful divine powers merged together and crashed into the Godhead fragment in the cauldron. Instantly, the divine king's body began to crumble. Even though he was a divine king, the Godhead fragment only contained less than 10% of his divine power. On the other hand, Lin Muyu's attack contained the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor's dark force and the heavenly book's dark force. How could a mere Godhead fragment withstand it? Bang! The Godhead fragment officially shattered. Countless divine powers turned into fiery red starlight that danced in the air inside the cauldron. This was a great opportunity to refine it. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and quickly absorbed the rich divine powers. One by one, the starlight seeped into his skin and slowly merged with his blood vessels. This was the mystical ability of the cauldron. It could directly assimilate other people's divine powers into its own, eliminating the need for fusion. As the third divine power entered his body, Lin Muyu couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, the cauldron shone brightly and began to refine the dark force in his chi. This fellow's heart was evil. The heavenly book's divine power and the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor's divine power had just helped him, and now he wanted to kill him. In an instant, before the 3 divine powers could resist, they were completely refined by Lin Muyu's mighty power. Wisps of divine power gathered in his chi and became a different kind of power from the king's fighting flame. This power was cultivated from Lin Muyu's heart and soul. The power was very clear and very pure. Suddenly, a comfortable feeling spread through his body. This new divine power was quickly healing the damage caused by the 7 glorious stars transformation. This was a divine power that was filled with the power to restore life. Lin Muyu was pleasantly surprised. At the same time, this divine power also contained the shocking flame force and the vigorous destructive power of the 7 luminaries. It seemed to have combined the strengths of the 3 divine powers. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha. In the night sky, Lin Muyu laughed heartily. This time, his power had really improved by leaps and bounds. Thanks to this quintessence fragment, the intensity of his king's fighting flame had increased by a lot. He had already stepped into the realm of initial success of the divine legacy realm. At the same time, Lin Muyu named this divine power, Fushi divine power. After all, it was thanks to this divine power contained in the heavenly book that he could refine the quintessence fragment. It was also at this moment, when his chi sank into his dantian, he could see every little ripple in his sea of chi and sea of will. Even the slightest ripple in his sea of chi couldn't escape his perception. This could only prove one thing: his control over his strength had deepened by another level. "Lulu, come out." The beautiful female elf official flew out and said with a smile, "Congratulations on obtaining Fuxi divine power, big brother. This wisp of divine power is much stronger than the 5% divine power left behind by the demon emperor." Yes. Lin Muyu was well aware that although the strength of this Fuxi divine power was not as strong as the fundamental power of the king's fighting flame, it was enough to be used in actual combat. After all, the purity of divine power was incomparable to the king's fighting flame. Continue, power test. Chapter 498. 3181%. 3182%. 3183%. Lulu kept reporting Lin Muyu's power coefficient. When it reached 3183%, she stopped and smiled. "This is the power. Brother, feel it." "Okay." Lin Muyu closed his eyes. After cultivating Fuxi's divine power, his sea of will and sea of qi were refined and his sensitivity was greatly improved. Now, he could easily sense the degree of a certain level of power and easily control the subtle fluctuations of power. This was indeed incomparable to his previous cultivation. He was secretly delighted. This time, the key of the heavenly book would not be able to escape his grasp, right? He called Lulu back and began his attempt. When his palm covered the heavenly book actually emitted a power that came from the source. It was as if Lin Muyu's power and Fuxi's heavenly book had merged into one. Swoosh! After entering the heavenly book's territory, the power quickly turned into a golden pool and extended. When the key of the heavenly book appeared, Lin Muyu also took a deep breath and began to slowly increase the power of the king's combat flame. When it reached 3183%, he immediately stopped increasing the power. Looking at the key of the heavenly book in the distance, he gently stepped on the golden pool and directly leaped over. Close. Close. The key of the heavenly book was getting closer and closer. As expected, the scene suddenly stretched, but the direction he was flying towards was still the key of the heavenly book. After all, his power was already accurate to the second decimal place. However, just as he was about to touch it, the scene rapidly stretched again. Shameless. Lin Muyu almost cursed out loud. Could it be that he had to be accurate to the third or even the fourth decimal place to obtain the key of the heavenly book? However, this time, Lin Muyu did not say anything. Just as the scene was about to stretch, he raised his arm. The gourd vine broke out of his body and directly wrapped around the key of the heavenly book that was about 10 meters away. He suddenly exerted force and directly pulled the key of the heavenly book back. Pa! The key of the heavenly book was firmly in his hand. To deal with a shameless setting, one must use shameless methods. At this moment, the key of the heavenly book suddenly turned into a golden light and seeped into his body, as if some kind of seal had been opened. Lin Muyu's heavenly book was quickly sent out and returned to the real world. When he opened his eyes, he found that Fuxi's heavenly book was emitting a strange light. The originally wordless heavenly book had lines of tiny words. They were all divine words, which were oracle bone script. At this moment, Lin Muyu could not help but feel grateful for the arrangement of the heavens. Most people would not be able to understand the oracle bone script, but he could. This could be traced back to when he was young. In order to chase after girls, Lin Muyu had once been deeply immersed in the wonderful subject of archaeology, to the point that he had gone crazy studying the oracle bone inscriptions. It was no exaggeration to say that he was familiar with the oracle bone inscriptions, to the point that he had almost forgotten his original intention of studying archaeology to chase after girls. Looking at the divine text on the heavenly book, Lin Muyu was secretly delighted. It was time to learn the heavenly book's inscriptions. On the first line of the heavenly book, there was a row of ice-type inscriptions: Frost, XXXXX, Chill, XXXXX, Freezing, XXXXX, Snowflake, XXXX. Lin Muyu was confused. There were only a few words on this line of engraved text, and the rest were replaced by circle symbols. Could it be that she had to fill it in herself? Upon closer inspection, it seemed that this was indeed the case. It was said that the inscriptions of the tomes of heaven were not rigidly bound to the format. As early as thousands of years ago, there were many masters who could innovate the inscriptions of the tomes of heaven. They only had to follow a few keywords. Lin Muyu was relieved and slowly closed the Fuxi tomes of arcane. She was so tired that she was about to die. Moreover, she didn't have any materials for inscription. Even if she wanted to write the tomes of arcane, she didn't have the conditions. She'd better have a good sleep. At this time, the sky was about to brighten. Wei Chao's voice came from outside the courtyard. "Lord Commander, Miss Xiaotang just came over. She said that there will be an auction for the Godslayer seal embryo this afternoon. She asked if you would like to personally come to the Purple Yinhua auction house." Okay. Lin Muyu pushed open the door of the main hall and said, "Send someone to tell Xiaotang that I'll be there on time. Also, help me find a new bed. I want to have a good sleep." "Yes, Commander." Wei Chou nodded his head. At the same time, he looked at the ruined inner courtyard of the main hall. He could not help but be surprised, but he did not say anything. As a cultivator, he naturally knew this kind of pain. The slightest carelessness could cause damage to objects, but for a cultivator to be strong enough to destroy a courtyard wall of 100 meters, Lin Muyu's strength could almost be called a monster. When she opened her eyes, it was already noon. Lin Muyu hurriedly got up and washed up. Wei Chou had prepared lunch and ate a few mouthfuls. Outside, Bai Yin held Takshu's hand and said with a smile, "Commander, let's go." She turned around and got on the horse, bringing Bai Yin and Wei Chou straight to the Purple Yinhua auction house. Tongtian Street was filled with people. When they arrived in front of the Purple Yinhua auction house, Lin Muyu was shocked. There were so many people. It was a sea of people. There were carriages parked outside. Many of the carriages were decorated with gold and engraved patterns. 2 or 4 carriages could only be considered average. Some carriages were even pulled by 6 horses. This meant that they were at least marquises. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to be so ostentatious. Lin Muyu was also a marquis. Marquis Yunling was personally conferred by the Empress, but he didn't pay much attention to it. He whipped the horse quickly. No carriage was as comfortable as the treading snow warhorse. Fortunately, Jin Xiaotang sent someone to welcome them. After entering through the side door of the auction house, they went straight to the auction house. Lin Muyu was arranged to be in a VIP room with a very good view. She could see everything in the auction house clearly. Furthermore, there were 2 beautiful maids serving her. They poured tea and presented plates of fruits. They were very enthusiastic. It seemed that these maids also knew the identity of the young general in front of them. He was one of the commanders of the 9 great armies of the empire. He was conferred the title of Marquis Yunling. He was also one of the 4 heroes of Lanyan conferred by the former emperor. He had completely defeated the Qianfeng army of the demon race in the Battle of Wildfire Plains. Wei Chou looked at the auction house and couldn't help but exclaim, "There are so many people." Bai Yin nodded, "At least 10,000 people." Lin Muyu smiled slightly. Only Jin Xiaotang could create this kind of array, right? There was no lack of nobles among the people who came. For example, Tang Tian and Tang Lu, Marquis Lingbei and Marquis Lingxi were here. In addition, Prince Qin Yong of Prince Zhong's residence was also here. Prince Zhong's residence was one of the 4 great families of heavenly tomes. Because of the opening of the gate of heavenly defense, the heavenly tomes once again possessed the power of heaven and earth. As a result, Prince Zhong's residence, which had been in decline for hundreds of years and was almost forgotten by the world, rose rapidly. Even Qin Yin would respectfully address Qin Yong as uncle. It was enough to show how much the empire valued the heavenly tomes. On the auction stage, Jin Xiaotang wore a fiery red soft armor and walked forward with a dagger in her hand. She smiled and said, "First of all, I would like to thank everyone for coming to our Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce today. Xiaotang greets everyone here. I know that most of you are here for the deity slaying seal, but Xiaotang would like to remind everyone that other than the deity slaying seal, we still have many other treasures. For example, this mysterious grade level 2 dagger in my hand, it's used to kill and rob. Ah Pui, it's an excellent weapon for self-defense. The starting price is 8,000 Jin dollars. Lin Muyu sat by the window and smiled as she watched the auction. After 4 hours, Jin Xiaotang's throat was almost hoarse. After auctioning off dozens of items, it was finally time for the main event. Jin Xiaotang carried a shield that glowed with a blood-red light and walked onto the stage. She smiled and said, "Here, this is the deity slaying seal. The deity slaying seal allows the user to possess a certain amount of divine power. Don't miss it when you walk past. The starting price is 1 million Jin dollars. Everyone can bid now, but you must bring enough gold notes with you. Otherwise, Xiaotang will personally send you to the Fire Sparrow Division and have the Fire Sparrow Division's patrol officers treat you with an iron plate." The crowd roared with laughter. Following that, the price of this finale item also began to be called out. 150 W. Among the bustling crowd, a young man from the Zhong prince's residence raised his arm. It was Qin Jiu, the only son of the Zhong prince, Qin Yong. Presumably, the Zhong prince's residence had been moved to Lanyan City by Qin Yin's imperial edict, and the entire family must have received a lot of relocation expenses. For these aristocratic families of the heavenly books, Qin Yin had indeed spent a lot of money. Now, this sum of money, Lin Muyu wanted to get it all back for her girlfriend. A mere deity-slaying seal weapon embryo was useless. Even with the deity-slaying seal, could it be a match for a godly state expert? Obviously not. What Lin Muyu valued the most was the heavenly books. A low-grade heavenly book was enough to make Feng Jixing struggle. If he could gather 100 heavenly books and use them together, the power would be unimaginable. It should be similar to the apocalypse, right? Just as Lin Muyu was thinking about it, someone in the huge VIP seats raised his arm and said, 2 million Jin dollars. The person who shouted was Ouyang Long, the eldest son of the heavenly book 4 great families, the Ouyang family. Lin Muyu could not help but snicker. These heavenly book 4 great families were simply thirsting for the deity-slaying seal weapon embryo. Finally, the people from the Ji residence made a move. Ji Shang raised his hand and shouted, 3 million Jin dollars. 4 million Jin dollars. Ouyang Long shouted, unwilling to be outdone. Immediately, Qin Jiu from the Zhong residence said angrily, crazy. The Ouyang family is a bunch of lunatics. Ji Shang was also stunned. He looked at Ji Lin suspiciously and said, Grandfather, where did the Ouyang family get 4 million Jin dollars from? I'm afraid that all the rewards from the Empress wouldn't be that much, right? Ji Lin frowned. I don't know either. Continue bidding. If it exceeds 8 million, then forget it. Yes. Ji Shang raised his arm again, 5 million Jin dollars. Ouyang Long's face was ashen. He gritted his teeth and said, damn it, I knew it wouldn't end well. As he spoke, he raised his voice and shouted, 7 million Jin dollars. Everyone at the scene was scared out of their wits. A weapon embryo could be sold at such a high price. How much had it been inflated? 8 million Jin dollars. Ji Shang's voice was trembling. This was the most money the Ji residents could offer. Any more, and they would probably have to sell their assets. Ouyang Long immediately stood up and shouted, 10 million Jin dollars. Young master of the Ji residence, do you really want to compete with us? Ji Shang's face was full of forbearance. He cupped his fists and smiled. Ji Shang is convinced. This weapon embryo belongs to the Ouyang family. Jin Xiaotang was also grinning from ear to ear. With a bang, she finalized the deal and said, "Young Master Ouyang Long of the Ouyang family has successfully bid 10 million Jin dollars for the weapon embryo. Please come backstage and trade with me." That was 10 million Jin dollars. It was enough to equip half of the Longdan army camp. These people were indeed lunatics who did not take money seriously. Chapter 499. Oh ho ho, at dusk, Jin Xiaotang's exaggerated laughter could be heard from the back hall of the Zine Flower Merchant Guild. She held a pile of gold notes in her hands and was grinning from ear to ear. She placed the gold notes on the table and laughed. "Big brother, did you see that? It's a whole 10 million Jinan coins. A Godslayer seal embryo can be sold for such a high price. That's the entire Lingbei province's monthly income. This is ridiculous." Lin Muyu picked up a banknote with 100,000 Jinan coins printed on it. It was a banknote belonging to the North Ridge Gold Union. The North Ridge Gold Union was directly under the Ministry of Revenue, and its status was equivalent to the People's Bank of China. Therefore, these banknotes would definitely be exchanged for Jinan coins, unless the empire fell. There were a total of 100 gold notes. After clearing them all, Lin Muyu laughed. "Then these 10 million Jinan coins are all mine. I haven't had so much money in a long time. Is that okay?" Jin Xiaotang smiled and nodded. "Yes, yes. The Merchant Guild has enough funds to work with. Just one afternoon, we earned more than 5 million from the auction. Hee, it's all thanks to the influence of this Godslayer seal embryo. Big brother, if you have time, make a few more Godslayer seals and Godslayer seals to solidify the Zine Flower Merchant Guild's position as the #1 merchant guild in Lanyan City." Jin Xiaotang couldn't close her mouth and said happily, "Now I can imagine how ugly Pan Dingtian, Lu Xian, and Zhao Su's faces will be." Oh ho ho, the Godslayer seal and Godslayer seal are both high-level inscriptions. They can't be inscribed just because you want to. It depends on your luck and technique. Anyway, wait for me to inscribe them. Lin Muyu kept the gold notes and said, "Xiaotang, didn't you say you wanted to win over a group of people who can inscribe the heavenly tomes? How did it go?" "No results." Jin Xiaotang pouted and said unhappily, "Anyone who can inscribe the heavenly tomes has gone to the heavenly tomes pavilion. It said that those who can inscribe the earthly tomes, heavenly tomes, and godly tomes will be conferred with titles. This isn't something that can be bought with gold." "Alright," Lin Muyu muttered, "let's not talk about this anymore. How about the heavenly book inscription materials in our Chamber of Commerce? Prepare one for me, I want to learn to inscribe heavenly book inscriptions." "Oh." Jin Xiaotang's eyes brightened, and a refreshing smile immediately appeared on her originally unhappy face. She held on to Lin Muyu's arm and said, "Brother, you wants to learn the tomes of arcane inscription?" "Yeah, can't I?" "Yes, yes." Jin Xiaotang could already see spirit books, earth books, and heavenly books flying towards the Chamber of Commerce. Based on her experience, Lin Muyu was a freak who could basically learn everything, and she was able to reach the peak very quickly. It could be said that half of the credit for the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce's position as the #1 in Lanyan City came from Jin Xiaotang's operations, and the other half came from Lin Muyu's repeated supply of high-grade weapons and engravings. They first went to the material shop, and saw that the huge material shop was filled with boxes of spirit stone powder, all of which had been crushed. Moreover, there were many beautiful girls standing in the shop, attracting attention. Looking at these girls, every one of them was very beautiful, and the strength of the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce could be seen from this. A fat shopkeeper came forward. He knew Lin Muyu, and said with a face full of smiles, "Miss Xiaotang, what did you bring Commander Yu here to take?" He said, "Take, not buy." He was a smart person, and knew that the entire Chamber of Commerce belonged to Lin Muyu. He didn't need to buy anything, he only needed to take it. Jin Xiaotang was still holding on to Lin Muyu's wrist, and said with a smile, "My brother wants to buy some spirit stone powder to learn the tomes of arcane inscription." Shopkeeper Su, "Do as you see fit." Learn the tomes of arcane inscription. The fat on shopkeeper Su's face trembled, and then he said with a face full of smiles, Commander Yu, the spirit stone powder needed to learn the tomes of arcane inscription is divided into 4 grades: mysterious iron powder, mysterious copper powder, mysterious silver powder, and mysterious gold powder. Each type of spirit stone powder is further divided into lower, middle, upper, and supreme grade according to its purity and spiritual power. If Commander Yu is a beginner, then you can bring some supreme mysterious iron powder back. Although the spiritual power of mysterious iron powder is weak, as long as you have the strength of the brush and the mental state, you can also write a human book or even a spiritual book. Jin Xiaotang immediately became unhappy, and she frowned. Tui, how can my brother Yu use such a lowly material like mysterious iron powder to learn the tomes of arcane inscription? First, weigh 5 caddies of supreme mysterious silver powder for practice. Shopkeeper Su's body trembled, and he said, Eldest miss, supreme mysterious silver powder costs 50 Jin coins per caddy. 1 caddy of supreme mysterious silver powder is 5,000 Jin coins, so 5 caddies would be 25,000 Jin coins. It's too wasteful to use it all for practice. Jin Xiaotang's pink lips curled up, and she had an unhappy expression on her face. What? My brother Yu is the commander of the Valiant Dragon Legion, a first-rank general, and the Marquis of Yunling, conferred the title of Marquis of Yunling by His Highness. You actually think that he is not worthy of 25,000 Jin coins? Cold sweat broke out on shopkeeper Su's forehead. How could he afford to offend her? The only reason he said all this was because he was a businessman, and he wanted to save money. He was at a loss of what to do, and he hurriedly knelt down. Commander Yu, please forgive me, I didn't mean it that way. Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh, and she raised her hand, and an invisible pressure from the Saint Realm helped the shopkeeper up. She said, Don't be afraid, I didn't mean it that way. Since you said it like that, then give me 5 caddies of low-grade mysterious copper powder. Since I can't write high-grade tomes of arcane inscription like the Spirit Book or the Earth Book, I can practice first. Okay. Shopkeeper Su wiped the sweat off his forehead, and while he was amazed by the mysterious and invisible power, he ordered his servant, Come, give Commander Yu 5 caddies of low-grade mysterious copper powder. Yes, shopkeeper. But Jin Xiaotang still wasn't satisfied, and she said, That little fellow, give big brother Yu 2 caddies of top-grade mysterious silver powder and 2 caddies of mid-grade mysterious gold powder as well. After he practices, he must use a good amount of spirit powder. Just put it on the Chamber of Commerce's account. Got it. The shop assistant happily went to weigh the spirit powder. Shopkeeper Su muttered under his breath, My God, mid-grade mysterious gold powder is already the best inscription material in our Chamber of Commerce. 1 caddy costs 500 Jin coins, so 2 caddies would be 100,000 Jin coins. Miss Xiaotang, we only have less than 10 caddies of mid-grade mysterious gold powder. Why don't we give Commander Yu low-grade mysterious gold powder? Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh. Jin Xiaotang was immediately angered. Shopkeeper Su, why are you babbling like this? Look, big brother Yu is laughing because of you. Quick, mid-grade mysterious gold powder, don't be so stingy. Lin Muyu reached out and patted Jin Xiaotang's shoulder, and said with a smile, It's all right, Xiaotang, just give me 2 caddies of low-grade mysterious gold powder, I'm not angry. With a calculative merchant like shopkeeper Su in the Chamber of Commerce, there's no need to worry that the Chamber of Commerce won't prosper. Jin Xiaotang couldn't help but smile. All right then, I'll listen to big brother Yu. Okay. After buying the spiritual powder, the next thing to buy was an engraving pen. All the heavenly book inscriptions were written with a pen, and people called it a spiritual pen. In fact, the so-called spiritual pen was fake. It was just a hollow object similar to a ballpoint pen, and when the spiritual powder was poured into it, the spiritual powder would naturally seep into the tool embryo. Once the strength of the pen and the state of mind were sufficient, the power of heaven and earth would be activated to form a book. Therefore, Lin Muyu randomly bought a few spiritual pens and stuffed them into the Qingquan bag. Then, she continued to look for the third required material with Jin Xiaotang, the tool embryo. The requirements for the carrier of the heavenly book inscriptions were much stricter than the engraving, and the tool embryo must also have a certain amount of spiritual power. Therefore, the weapons, shields, and armors made of mysterious iron and mysterious copper would be more likely to activate the power of heaven and earth. It was also because of this that the major chambers of commerce had opened new, tool embryo shops, to sell some tool embryos that could easily be turned into books. The scale of the tool embryo shop was much larger than the spiritual powder shop. It was brightly lit, and all the tool embryos were stored in glass cabinets, reflecting a strange luster under the light of the candles. Jin Xiaotang smiled and introduced, the tool embryos are divided into 5 types: low grade, middle grade, fine, high grade, and top grade. The prices are also getting more and more expensive. The cheapest low-grade tool embryo can be bought for about 1 Jianghu coin, but the price of a top-grade tool embryo can be raised to more than 10,000 Jianghu coins. In fact, many of the mysterious and spiritual grade weapons that Big Brother Yu has forged are already very good tool embryos. However, if you're a beginner in heavenly book inscriptions, Xiaotang suggests that you buy some low-grade, middle grade, and fine tool embryos from the shop. Okay. Lin Muyu nodded and quickly picked a pile of daggers, swords, broadswords, shields, and other tool embryos. Most of them were middle grade and fine tool embryos. His gaze swept across a golden dagger placed in the center of the shop. Jin Xiaotang burst into laughter. That dagger is called the Dazzling Gold Dagger. It's made from dark gold and is a mysterious grade rank 1 weapon. It has a lot of spiritual energy and is a top-grade tool embryo. It's probably the best tool embryo in the Purple Flower Chamber of Commerce. Big Brother Yu, do you want it? There's no need, it'll be a waste. Lin Muyu touched his nose. Jin Xiaotang giggled. All right then, we'll study this after Big Brother Yu has made some progress in heavenly book inscriptions. Okay. Just as Lin Muyu was packing up everything, a chiliarch from the royal army walked straight over and cupped his fists respectfully. Commander Yu, Her Highness has set up a banquet at the Zetian Palace tonight and has invited you. Please head over to the Zetian Palace before sunset. Oh, is there something important to discuss? Lin Muyu asked. I don't know. All right, you may go. Yes. Qin Yin had set up a banquet at the Zetian Palace. It seemed that there was no way for him to study heavenly book inscriptions tonight. He had to go and take a look first. Chapter 500. At night, the Zetian Palace Hall was brightly lit. Hundreds of celestial crane lanterns shone with a faint luster, illuminating the magnificent palace hall. When Lin Muyu arrived, she found that many important officials had already arrived. The 2 princes, Tang Lan and Su Muyun, were both present. Although outsiders could not be conferred the title of king, the power of these 2 people was simply too great. The rule that outsiders could not be conferred the title of king seemed to exist in name only to them. Other than these important officials from the various departments, there were also the commanders of the various armies, as well as the ministers of the 6 ministries. Other than these important officials from the various ministries, there were some unfamiliar faces. Some of them Lin Muyu knew, such as Ji Lin, Ouyang Ping, and the others. They were people from the 4 great clans of the Heavenly Book. Most of the people attending the banquet tonight were people from the Heavenly Book Pavilion. One could already faintly foresee what was going to happen. Tang Xiaoxi welcomed her from afar. She was wearing a fiery red gown. The gown was decorated with exquisite gems and golden patterns, making this beautiful young lady who was gradually maturing look even more beautiful. The long gown wrapped around her exquisite and curvy body, outlining the perfect curves that were filled with youthfulness. It could simply be said that she was radiating brilliance. Lin Muyu's eyes couldn't help but light up. She smiled and said, Xiaoxi is really beautiful tonight. Tang Xiaoxi pouted and said with a smile, fortunately, you came today. Otherwise, wouldn't I have dressed up for nothing? As she said that, she seemed to feel that her words were too suggestive. She couldn't help but blush and turned her pretty face away from Lin Muyu, pretending that she didn't say anything. All right, let's take our seats. The commander of the Imperial Guards, Qin Yan, had already walked over in a suit of armor. Behind him were a few Imperial Guards with calm expressions. He cupped his fists respectfully and said with a smile, "Big brother, you've come. You and Princess Xi's seats will be arranged at the place closest to His Highness. Follow me." All right. After everyone took their seats, Qin Yin finally arrived. She was dressed in a beautiful dark blue gown, and the pattern of a divine dragon was embellished with a sapphire gem. It was beautiful and majestic. She held the faintly glowing heaven-suppressing sword in her hand. She gently sat on the throne and looked at the officials with a smile. She was not angry, but she was not angry. With the arrival of the Empress, everyone naturally quietened down quickly. However, Qin Yin's gaze fell on Lin Muyu because she hadn't seen him for many days. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin looked at each other. She could read the longing in Qin Yin's eyes. She couldn't help but pout mischievously and blow the Empress a kiss. Immediately, Qin Yin's face turned red, but the officials were too far away and the angle was not right. They didn't know what happened, but Shangguan Jingyue, who was standing beside Qin Yin, burst into laughter. "All right, let's start the banquet," Qin Yin said. "Yes." Shangguan Jingyue walked forward, announced the start of the banquet, and served the wine and dishes. Ever since the reorganization of the Imperial Guards, the Eagle Nest Barracks had also been rebuilt. Qin Yan personally supervised the construction, and very quickly, it had an establishment of 700 to 800 people. Furthermore, there was no lack of experts. Therefore, there was no need to worry about the food supply in Zetian Palace Hall. There were many wild animals and rare fruits in the dragon-seeking forest. Very quickly, the table was filled with them, and a refreshing fragrance assaulted the senses. Lin Muyu's gaze was fixed on the plate of fish in front of him. It smelled very fragrant. It was the legendary arowana. The taste was extremely delicious, and it had already whetted his appetite. Qin Yin held up her wine cup, stood up gently, and said, "Everyone, I have invited everyone here for a joyous gathering tonight. I hope that everyone will not be restrained and will not leave until we are drunk. Come, let us drink to the fullest. May the Qin Empire be prosperous and prosperous for all eternity. Prosperous and peaceful, and prosperous for all eternity." Everyone raised their cups in unison and drained the wine in one gulp. No one dared to disrespect the Empress's toast. After drinking the wine, a wave of mellow fragrance and spiciness flowed into her throat. Lin Muyu immediately swept through the delicacies on the table in front of her. While she was gorging herself, one of the people at the banquet stood up. It was Ji Lin. "Manager Ji Lin, what's the matter?" Qin Yin asked with a smile. Ji Lin cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness, I have already drafted out the ranks and treatment of the people who will be joining the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Please take a look." Qin Yin waved her hand and said, "Sir Manager, you can just read it out directly. Let everyone listen to it." "Yes." Ji Lin took out a scroll hidden in his sleeve, opened it, and said in a clear voice, "The Heavenly Book Pavilion uses literature to govern the country. Anyone who can write a heavenly book can be included in the literary circles of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Those who write a book of adulthood will be titled Person, with a monthly salary of 200 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of spiritual books will be titled Spiritual Knight, with a monthly salary of 1,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of earthly books will be titled Earthly Scholar, with a monthly salary of 3,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of heavenly books will be titled Heavenly Scholar, with a monthly salary of 10,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of God will be titled Duke, with a monthly salary of 100,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of God will be titled Duke, with a monthly salary of 10,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of God will be titled Duke, with a monthly salary of 100,000 gold kin coins. Your Highness, please take a look. After Ji Lin's speech, it was as if a huge rock had been thrown into a peaceful banquet, causing a huge uproar. One person slammed the table and stood up. It was the commander of the Iron Blade Army, Su Long. His expression was very ugly, and his words were full of the smell of gunpowder. He said, "Pa. Writing a book of heavenly books and you can be titled as a duke? Do you think the marquises of the Qin Empire are cabbages that can be found on the streets? A mere earthly scholar wants a monthly salary of 3,000 gold kin coins? Dream on. Do you know the monthly salary of the commanders of the Qin Empire? The dignified commander of the Iron Blade Army only gets a monthly salary of 1,000 gold kin coins. What right do you, a mere earthly scholar, have to receive so much more than us?" Another commander also stood up and cupped his fists. He said, "Your Highness, please understand. We, the soldiers of the Qin Empire, have risked our lives to fight against the demon race and the rebels of the Iha Kingdom, in exchange for the temporary peace and tranquility of the Qin Empire. Many soldiers have died for the Qin Empire, and now you are actually conferring titles to these so-called scholars. The soldiers of the Qin Empire cannot accept this." More and more people objected. Even the faces of Feng Jixing, Xiang Yu, and Su Yu showed some displeasure. Qin Yin saw this and silently nodded. She said, "I understand what the commanders mean. However, the Book of Heavenly Books is a mysterious formation that can draw the power of heaven and earth. The Qin Empire has no choice but to pay attention to it. As for Sir Ji Lin's rank in the distribution of monthly salary, it is not too exaggerated. After all, no one has been able to write a book of heavenly books, and even books of earthly books are extremely rare." At this moment, the Minister of Revenue stood up and said respectfully, "Your Highness, the revenue of the Ministry of Revenue is almost fixed every year. If it is really like Sir Ji Lin's distribution of rewards, I'm afraid that the expenditure of the Ministry of Revenue will greatly exceed the budget. As the number of scholars engraved the Book of Heavenly Books increases, this expenditure will definitely increase until the Ministry of Revenue can no longer bear it." "Your Highness," Feng Jixing said calmly, "I think it is better to slightly reduce the monthly salary of some scholars. Otherwise, it will really be like what the Minister of Revenue said. The entire empire's income will be burdened by the Heavenly Book Pavilion." However, at this moment, Qin Yong of Prince Zhong residence stood up and cupped his fists respectfully. "Your Highness, once the strategy of ruling the country with literature is formulated, it must not be abandoned. This old official thinks that the salary that Manager Ji Lin has listed is not excessive." Qin Yin nodded lightly. "I understand. Uncle Wang, please sit down." "Yes." At this moment, Xiang Yu slowly stood up and said, "Your Highness, the demon race and the Iha nation's rebels are still eyeing the empire covetously. If we spend all the Jingxian coins on the Heavenly Book Pavilion, once the demon race and the Iha nation start another war, how will the empire defend itself? Don't tell me, we can only rely on these weak scholars holding the Book of Heavenly Books to guard our territory? This lowly general doesn't know if these scholars can hear the sound of the Iha nation's iron hooves and pee their pants." Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh. Even Xiang Yu seemed to be unable to sit still. Once Qin Yin approved the Heavenly Book Pavilion's request, the empire would really be strong in literature but weak in martial arts. At this moment, beside the patriarch of the four great clans, Lu Yen, a handsome man stood up. With a schwa sound, he put away his paper fan, cupped his fists, and said respectfully, "Your Highness, I believe that the various commanders must not have seen the power of the Heavenly Book inscriptions. If they had seen it, they would most likely agree with Lord Steward Ji Lin's request." Xiang Yu raised his eyebrows. "Who are you?" The young man respectfully said, "I am the second son of the Lu residents, Lu Feng." Qin Yin smiled slightly. "Young Master Lu Feng, what grade of heavenly book can you write?" Lu Feng replied, "I am untalented. I just wrote a low-grade earthly book late last night. If I have more time, I will definitely write a real heavenly book for your highness." Not far away, Ji Lin said, "Your Highness, the second son of the Lu residents, Lu Feng, is indeed a rare genius. He is able to write an earthly book at the age of 27, which is rare in the world. His aptitude and comprehension are top-notch." "Is that so?" Qin Yin's eyes were filled with praise. The Empire needs a talent like young Master Lu Feng. I hope that you will continue to work hard. Lu Feng raised his head and looked at Qin Yin. Immediately, he was deeply subdued by the Empress's peerless beauty. For a moment, his face was filled with admiration. He cupped his fists and said, "For your Highness, I will definitely not let you down." He kept saying, "For your Highness," which made everyone a little unhappy. Furthermore, Lu Feng's gaze towards Qin Yin was obviously less respectful and more frivolous. Feng Jixing was slightly angry and said, "Young Master Lu Feng, as a subject, you actually dare to look directly at Her Highness's appearance. Aren't you being too frivolous?" Lu Feng hurriedly lowered his head and said respectfully, "I deserve to die. It's just that Her Highness's appearance is like that of a celestial being. It's so breathtakingly beautiful that it's like a fairy descending to the mortal world. I couldn't help but look at it for a while longer. I hope that Her Highness will forgive me." Feng Jixing clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were filled with anger. At this moment, Lin Muyu stood up and said, "Your Highness, I request that the salary of the Heavenly Book Pavilion be reduced by half." "Oh, does brother you think so too?" Qin Yin smiled sweetly. When Lu Feng saw how intimate Qin Yin was with Lin Muyu, he felt uncomfortable and said, "Your Highness, the salary of the Heavenly Book Pavilion must not be reduced. Scholars are the foundation of an empire. In my opinion, we should reduce the size and equipment expenditure of the major armies of the empire and spend the Jinin coins on the Heavenly Book inscriptions." Bullsh *T. Lin Muyu cursed and said, "How can you say something like reducing the empire's armies? Once the demon race and Iha nation start a war, will the empire rely on trash like you to guard the borders?" Lu Feng raised his sword-like eyebrows and said, "Scholars are not useless. Everyone in the empire can cultivate martial arts, but not everyone can write a heavenly book inscription. Only 1 in 10,000 can write a book. Commander Yu is proud of his outstanding martial arts cultivation, but you must not look down on the Heavenly Book Pavilion, because a heavenly book is something you will never be able to reach in your lifetime." "Is that so?" Lin Muyu sneered, "If I can write a heavenly book, the salary of the Heavenly Book Pavilion will be reduced by half. How about it? You can write a book?" Lu Feng couldn't help but laugh. His eyes were full of disdain as he said, "If Commander you can write a heavenly book, even if it's just a personal book, Lu Feng will concede defeat." Chapter 501. "Fine, I'll write it," Lin Muyu lightly said. Lu Feng laughed loudly. The disdain in his eyes was not concealed at all. "Commander Yu, as a general of the empire, you are indeed a true person, but, do you know hieroglyphs? Do you need this Lu to bring you a hieroglyphs translation book?" "No need." Lin Muyu slowly stood up. At this time, a young man from the Zhong Palace also stood up. It was Qin Jiu, the son of the Zhong Palace. After all, he was a member of the Qin family and Lin Muyu was Qin Jin's adopted son. So, when it came to a conflict, he stood on Lin Muyu's side. Qin Jiu took out a spirit pen and then a small wooden box, saying, "Commander Yu, this is a spirit pen and 2 taels of mid-grade mysterious silver powder. If you don't mind, I'll lend it to you." "Thank you, Young Highness Qin Jiu." Lin Muyu cupped her hands and smiled. Feng Jixing glared at her. Do you know heavenly book inscriptions?" Don't force yourself." Tang Xiaoxi also pouted. "Hasn't Mu not started learning yet? This is most likely going to lose." Lin Muyu held the spirit pen and slowly poured the mysterious silver powder into it. Then, she looked at the group of Heavenly Book Pavilion scholars and smiled. "Does anyone have a blank tool embryo? Can I borrow it for a bit?" Everyone was silent. Only a beautiful girl sitting next to Lu Feng stood up. She was wearing a pretty floral dress and was full of youthfulness. She held a curved blade on her waist in her hand and said with a smile, "Commander Yu, this is my personal blade. It can be considered as a mid-tier incomplete weapon. If you don't mind, Lu Feng couldn't help but be a bit angry. This girl was none other than the eldest young miss of the Lu residence, Lu Ying. She was 18 years old and had a very delicate appearance, at least 9 out of 10. Moreover, she seemed to have a good impression of Lin Muyu. Her beautiful eyes stared straight at Lin Muyu with adoration as she smiled. Second brother, Commander Yu is the hero that defeated the demon race. What's wrong with lending him a tool embryo? Don't be so stingy. Lu Feng sighed and could not help but feel a little speechless. As the saying goes, beauties love heroes. Lu Ying was still young, so naturally, she was especially fond of Lin Muyu, who looked extraordinarily handsome and had an outstanding cultivation base. When Lu Ying handed the curved blade to Lin Muyu, she smiled and said, Commander Yu, do your best. Strive to write a heavenly book, do your best. Thank you, third mistress. Lin Muyu nodded. Not far away, Tang Xiaoxi was kneeling by the table. Do Qi was enshrouding her body and a faint flame lingered around her fiery red dress. She was about to transform into her 9 tails. Watching Lu Ying flirting with Lin Muyu from afar, she was so angry, this little vixen. Qin Yin was not much better. Her eyes were fixed on Lu Ying and her crescent moon-like eyebrows were slightly knitted. She was also angry. This little vixen, she really wanted to take off her dress and rush down the stairs to fight it out with her. Shangguan Jingyue saw everything clearly and couldn't help but smile. She whispered, Your Highness, you are the ruler of a country. You can't lower yourself to the level of a little girl. Bear with it. The manager of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, Ji Lin, stood up shakily. With a faint smile on his face, he said, Commander Yu, one of the 4 heroes of Lan and Yen conferred by the former emperor, personally wrote a heavenly book. This old man will personally carry it out for Commander Yu. At this time, an imperial guard came forward with a tray. Ji Lin and him each held a tray so that Lin Muyu's tool embryo had a place to put it. Lin Muyu's heart was still somewhat perturbed. Just now, she said that she wanted to write a heavenly book in a moment of anger. Now it was too late to regret it. What she had to think about now was what if it didn't become a book? That would be so shameful. Not only would it reduce the military expenditure of the major armies of the empire, but it would also directly embarrass the empress. What should she do? When he put Lu Ying's knife on the tray, countless years flew through his mind. He complained incessantly. This was really hard to get off. He hadn't even started to learn the heavenly book, and there was only one inscription in his mind, which was about frost. He didn't know if it would be successful. Commander Yu, shall we start? Ji Lin said with a smile. Lin Muyu responded with a polite smile. Then, she lifted the spiritual pen and gently exerted her strength. Suddenly, a stream of mysterious silver powder flowed out from the tip of the pen. The mysterious silver powder fell on the knife and immediately seeped into the steel, becoming a mark. As Lin Muyu wrote very carefully, 2 hieroglyphs had appeared on the knife, frost. Ji Lin was slightly stunned. He only knew that Lin Muyu's cultivation had stepped into the Holy King realm, and she was one of the few top experts in the empire. He didn't expect that this commander, who was ranked second among the 4 heroes of Lan Yen, could really recognize the hieroglyphs and could even write them. Even the technique of writing these words was very skillful. Only Lin Muyu knew all the pressure and pain. She complained incessantly in her heart. Her palm holding the spiritual pen trembled slightly, and her mind carefully recalled the keywords of this hieroglyphs: chilling, freezing, snowflake. The keywords of these 8 words must exist, otherwise, she couldn't activate the power of the law of heaven and earth. If I die, so be it. Right. He suddenly calmed down, and in an instant, the golden light in his eye shone brightly. A giant pen fell from the sky, bringing with it a brilliant light. It was the realm of the holy pen, Amaterasu. Lin Muyu couldn't help but be stunned. Was the realm of the holy pen, Amaterasu, the same as the heavenly book? Thinking of this, the pen moved like a dragon and quickly wrote the second paragraph. The chilling from purgatory, the chilling swallowed everything, froze everything in the world, and the sky was filled with endless snowflakes. All 8 keywords had appeared. But the whole knife was silent, and there was no movement of the power of heaven and earth. Ha 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 ha. During the banquet, the third young master of the Ouyang mansion, Ouyang Bao, laughed loudly. It seems that the power of heaven and earth has not been activated. Third Miss Lu Ying's knife is considered broken. Commander Yu, you should think about how to train the soldiers. Your hieroglyphs are not as good as your martial arts comprehension. Another group of disciples from the Heavenly Book clan started to make a ruckus. Commander Yu, give up, it's useless. The Heavenly Book inscriptions are the most mysterious power in the world. Those who haven't practiced for many years can't activate the power of heaven and earth. Commander Yu, it's not a shame not to have a book. Your achievements are already high enough, ha ha ha. It seems that not everyone can enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Ha ha ha, interesting, interesting. Sarcastic voices came one after another. Qin Yin frowned as she listened, and her palm pressed on the hilt of the heaven-suppressing sword. Tang Xiaoxi was even angrier. She held the flaming nation-suppressing whip in her hand, ready to lash at these bastards at any time. But Lin Muyu remained calm. Logically speaking, he had already activated the realm of the Holy Pen, Amaterasu, and should not have failed. No, there must be an error in these hieroglyphs. After looking at it carefully again, he suddenly realized that there was a problem with the word hua in the snowflake. According to the Oracle Bone script, there should be 2 horizontal lines below the word hua, but he only wrote 1 line. So that's why. He waved the spiritual pen lightly and added a horizontal line. In an instant, his spiritual sense seemed to leave his body, and his surroundings turned into a world of ice and snow. The scimitar appeared in the world of ice and snow, and the chill came whistling, freezing everything in the world. Is this the state of mind of the Heavenly Book? At this moment, a green light suddenly shot up from the scimitar into the sky, activating the power of heaven and earth. It's a book. Oh my God, it's a human book. Lin Muyu really wrote an adult book. Genius, he hasn't written a heavenly book before, right? Writing a book in one go, oh my God, what a freak. Looking at the intensity of the light, it should be a middle-grade human book. A beginner can actually write a middle-grade human book, it's really not easy. Everyone turned pale with fright, even Ji Lin was a little shocked. As the patriarch of the Heavenly Book clan, Ji Lin could be considered to have seen some geniuses in divine text, but he had never seen someone like Lin Muyu who could complete a book on her first try. Moreover, the book she wrote on her first try was not a low-grade book, but a mid-grade book. This was too shocking. Lu Ying sat there excitedly, and her pair of beautiful eyes were full of hope. She was so excited that she almost cried, wow. Lin Muyu is worthy of being one of the 4 heroes of Lan Yen. She's so powerful, she wrote a book. Lu Feng frowned, and his expression was extremely ugly. Qin Yin was overjoyed. She never thought that Lin Muyu could really write a book. She couldn't help but look at Tang Xiaoxi with joy. The 2 beautiful girls' eyes met. Well, it's time to learn Heavenly Book inscription with Lin Muyu. But at this time, Lin Muyu still didn't stop. According to the records in Fushi's Heavenly Book, there were 4 more words, which were also the 4 words of the title, and also the words that named the Heavenly Book inscription. After thinking for a while, she continued to write 4 words, ice alls everywhere. Whoosh! Another ray of Heavenly Book light rose from the blade, triggering a faint thunder in the sky. This time, the green light was even more intense, like a green light pillar shooting straight into the sky. Oh my God, Ji Lin was stunned. It was the second time it became a book, and it wasn't a middle-grade human book. According to the intensity of the light, this blade was already a top-grade human book embryo. Around them, everyone was already grinning from ear to ear, and their faces were filled with disbelief. It wasn't surprising that a person could write a human book. After all, after the gate of Heavenly Imperial Army reopened, many people had written human books and spiritual books. But to be able to write a top-grade human book on his first time inscribing a heavenly book, he must be a peerless genius. Even this kind of comprehension was above Lu Feng, the second young master of the Lu residence, who was known as a super genius. Qin Yin stood up majestically and said with a faint smile, "Manager Ji Lin, have you confirmed it?" Ji Lin was a little disappointed, reporting to Your Highness, Commander Yu has written a top-grade human book. He is really a genius. Qin Yin smiled slightly, looked at Lu Feng, and said, "Young Master Lu Feng, are you convinced?" Lu Feng was like a defeated rooster, cupped his fists, and said, I admit defeat, but I will not admit defeat. One day, I will write a heavenly book, a divine book. I hope that Commander Yu will also have such a day." This was tantamount to his second challenge. Lin Muyu ignored Lu Feng's provocation, cupped her fists, and said, "Since even a third-rate scholar like me can write a human book, it means that a divine book is not as difficult as you think. Your Highness, please issue an edict." Qin Yin smiled knowingly, and said, "Come, draft an edict to allow the Heavenly Will Pavilion's manager Ji Lin to write the ranking system, but the salary of all scholars will be halved, and the expenses will be paid by the Ministry of Revenue. The Empire will rule both civil and military, and will not favor any side." Yes. Chapter 502. Qin Yin stood up. Her dark blue dress was sparkling. The wind was getting stronger and stronger. The female officer had already put a female empress cloak on her. She held the golden wine goblet in one hand and put the other on the hilt of the heaven-suppressing sword hanging on her waist. She looked at the officials with watery eyes and said in a low but powerful voice, "After the Iha Kingdom's chaos, the empire has been rebuilt. However, the rebels of the Iha Kingdom in the south may cross the Qinling Mountains and invade at any time. We don't know how many armor demons are left in the 23 cities of the demon race in the east. After Min Yulin's border army was wiped out in Winter Frost City, the nomadic army of the northern desert is also ready to move. Outside the desert in the west, we don't know how many foreign tribes are coveting the fertile land of the Qin Empire. Qin Yin inherited the throne of the former empress and only hoped to revive the foundation of the Qin Empire and unify the empire. Therefore, I hope that everyone here can work together to strengthen the prestige of the empire. No matter the Heavenly Book Pavilion, the Divine Palace, or the armies of the empires, from now on, there must be no internal strife or disagreement. Otherwise, they will be severely punished." As she spoke, she raised her long, snow-white neck and downed a glass of wine in one gulp. Then, with a clang, she pulled out the heaven-suppressing sword. The sharp sword light was chilling under the candlelight. Just like that, Qin Yin placed the heaven-suppressing sword on the table, imperceptibly adding some pressure and majesty to the banquet. Lin Muyu looked at Qin Yin and couldn't help nodding in appreciation. It seemed that Qin Yin had grown a lot and was becoming more and more like a real empress. At this moment, Ji Lin raised his wine goblet to Lin Muyu and said with a smile, "Commander Yu, you have an excellent comprehension ability. You can actually write an excellent book of people in one go. I wonder if Commander Yu is willing to include this saber in the Heavenly Book Pavilion and your name in the list of scholars at the same time. You can enjoy the double treatment that His Highness has given you." Of course, Lin Muyu didn't want to live under someone else's roof. After all, his current status didn't allow him to start from zero. He smiled and said, "I get my salary from the Ministry of War every month, so I don't need to be included in the Heavenly Book Pavilion." Manager Ji Lin, thank you for your kindness. Ji Lin cupped his hands in salute. There was not a trace of displeasure on his face. However, everyone knew that Ji Lin was known as the best heavenly book writer in the empire, and he was also the most promising person to write the embryo of a heavenly book. After being summoned by the female empress to settle in Lanyan City, the Ji residents became even more arrogant, and they even looked down on the imperial commanders like Feng Jixing and Xiang Yu. Now that he was publicly rejected by Lin Muyu, one could imagine how angry Ji Lin was. However, this was the terrifying thing about humans. On the surface, Ji Lin was still calm and composed. He did not show any emotions on his face, as if nothing had happened. Lin Muyu held the scimitar that was used to write the book of a good person and walked straight to the front of the Lu residence. Lu Ying had already stood up with a smile on her face. "Congratulations, Commander Yu. You have written the best book of a good person. You are truly a genius in the heavenly book of inscription. Thank you, third mistress, for the embryo of a good person. Lin Muyu smiled slightly. Now, it is time to return the embryo to third mistress. Lu Ying was stunned for a moment and said, originally, this scimitar wasn't worth much, but Commander, you had already carved the best quality human script on it. This is no longer an ordinary scimitar. Lu Ying can't accept such a precious gift in return. Lin Muyu could not help but laugh. Originally, I should have compensated you with another one if the inscription is broken. Now that it is done, take it as a thank you gift. Third mistress, you don't have to be so courteous. Otherwise, I will feel indebted to you if I take the scimitar away. Lu Ying's bright eyes stared straight at the youngest and most promising general of the Qin Empire. The more she looked, the more she liked him. However, the reserved and shy nature of a young girl forced her to calm down. With a red face, she said, if that is the case, then Lu Ying thanks Commander Yu for the gift. I will keep this scimitar well. Lin Muyu was speechless. She couldn't help but feel helpless in her heart. Her luck with the ladies in the Empire had been unusually good these few years. Thinking back to when she was on Earth, she wasn't that popular. She returned the machete to Lu Ying and cupped her hands to salute Lu Yen. Lu Yen hurriedly stood up to return the salute and said, Marquis Yunling is too polite. Lord Lu Yen, please sit. There is no need to be polite. Yes, Lord Marquis. Lin Muyu turned around and sat down next to Tang Xiaoxi with a relaxed body. However, he saw Tang Xiaoxi looking at him faintly. He could not help but wonder, is there something on my face? Tang Xiaoxi stared at him with a pair of beautiful eyes. What do you think? That Lu Ying, did she fall for you? I don't know, not necessarily. Lin Muyu's heart was beating fast. You still say that? Everyone can see that Lu Ying likes you. Then I have no choice. Lin Muyu said helplessly, this is not something I can control. Tang Xiaoxi was still looking at him angrily. I really didn't do it on purpose. Lin Muyu coaxed. But Tang Xiaoxi was still unhappy. Xiaoxi, I was wrong. Lin Muyu continued to coax. Tang Xiaoxi still did not give him face. Anyway, I don't like her. Lin Muyu said. This time, Tang Xiaoxi's anger turned into joy. She tilted her head and asked him with a smile, really? Really? That's good. Otherwise, I will punish you on behalf of Xiao Yin. Although Tang Xiaoxi said so, her face was already filled with a refreshing and charming smile. A girl's mind was really hard to guess. Sure enough, a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. The banquet ended very late. After it was over, all the officials dispersed, but Lin Muyu was left behind. The number one female official of the Zetian Palace, Shangguan Jingyue, brought him to the rear hall, only to find that Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi were both there. The rear hall was filled with spirit books and earth books that were glowing with a faint luster. These divine characters were carved on the stones, and basically, they would never be used by anyone in their lifetime. After all, the stones were too big, and they were not suitable for the shape of weapons. Also, no one would carry a stone tablet into battle, as it would be too inelegant. However, the purpose of these books was to serve as a model for others to learn from. Alright, don't be nervous. Qin Yin walked forward, held his arm, and signaled for Shangguan Jingyue to step down. Then, she smiled and said, now can you teach me and Xiaoxi how to carve the characters? We have written it until now, but it hasn't been turned into a book. Alright. Lin Muyu had already guessed that it would be like this. Then, she sat beside Qin Yin, looked at the divine characters on the stone tablet, and carefully studied them. Suddenly, she felt the pressure on her soul increasing. As expected, the divine characters contained profound energy, which was different from ordinary characters. The divine characters that were assembled into a divine character already possessed the power of heaven and earth. Reading it required a lot of mental energy. However, this divine character, Earth Book, was recorded on this divine character. No matter how you looked at it, it felt awkward. It was the same divine character of the Law of Frost, but there were 8 keywords recorded in Fushi's heavenly book, but there were only 4 words in this divine character. Moreover, this divine character was written with black gold powder, and there were even golden marks on it. Tang Xiaoxi said at the side, "Don't underestimate this divine character of Earth Book. It was written by a Heaven Knight level inscription master more than 5,000 years ago, and he used high-grade black gold powder. Unfortunately, the completed book is only divine character of Earth Book." Lin Muyu muttered to herself and slowly lowered her body. She reached out her hand to touch the divine character carved on the stone, and her heart suddenly lit up. Maybe there were other laws? However, the reason why this Heaven Knight level inscription master used such good materials to activate the power of heaven and earth, but it was only an Earth Book, could only mean that there was a problem with the words. It should be that the keywords were not in place, right? Thinking of this, Lin Muyu immediately took out Fushi's heavenly book from her Qinkuan pouch, and directly placed it on the table beside Qin Yin. She flipped through the heavenly book page by page, and reached out her hand to caress the ice element law. She said, "Xiao Shi, record this." Oh. Tang Xiaoxi hurriedly walked over and leaned over the table. Following Lin Muyu's dictation, she recorded down the 10 keywords of the ice element divine character: frost, penetrating cold, chilling intent, freezing, snowflake. Qin Yin widened her beautiful eyes, looked at Fushi's heavenly book, and asked, You can read in this wordless heavenly book?" "Ah, there are no words." Lin Muyu stared at Fushi's heavenly book, which was full of divine characters, and asked. "Yes, not a single word." Qin Yin said, pouting. "Xiao Shi, can you see the words on the heavenly book?" "No." Tang Xiaoxi shook her head. "Not a single word." Lin Muyu clicked her tongue in wonder. Fushi's heavenly book was indeed mysterious. Could it be that because she had unlocked the seal, she was the only one in the world who could see the words on the heavenly book? Therefore, after that, Lin Muyu dictated the inscription method recorded in Fushi's heavenly book to Tang Xiaoxi so that the 2 girls could study it. Anyway, there was no need to keep this kind of thing to herself. Moreover, neither Qin Yin nor Tang Xiaoxi were outsiders. Studying the heavenly book should be of great benefit to their cultivation and cultivation. After a long time, Tang Xiaoxi took out a shield and said with a smile, "Mu, write another book for me and Xiao Shi to study." "Ah." Lin Muyu was stunned for a moment, then took the shield. When she took it, she found that Tang Xiaoxi's inscription pen was filled with low-grade dark gold powder. As expected of rich people, these 2 girls used the best materials. Therefore, she wrote a line of words on the shield: "Frost, the coldness from purgatory." The coldness devoured everything and froze everything in the world. The sky was filled with endless snowflakes, and the ground was covered with icicles. However, the surroundings were silent. The golden dark gold powder seeped into the shield, but it did not activate any heaven and earth energy. "What's going on?" Tang Xiaoxi leaned against the shield and said quietly, "Did it fail?" Qin Yin also leaned close to Lin Muyu and carefully looked at the divine inscription on the shield and said, "Is it useless?" Lin Muyu was a little embarrassed and said, "It doesn't seem to be 100% success rate." He knew very well that this time, he did not activate the realm of the holy brush, Amaterasu. He did not even enter the state of mind of the law of ice. This was probably the biggest reason why he did not complete the book. Speaking of which, there should not be 100% success rate when inscribing a heavenly book. Otherwise, the heavenly book would not be valuable. Chapter 503. Late at night, in the backyard of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, the Ouyang residence was brightly lit. Inside the hall, the shield with the god-slaying seal was quietly placed on the table. Ouyang Ping gently rubbed the surface of the shield with his palm, feeling the powerful energy contained within the profound formation. "Father, did you discover anything?" Ouyang Long asked. Ouyang Ping opened his eyes, a pair of black pupils filled with coldness, and said, although the god-slaying seal is powerful, your husband has yet to comprehend even a star and a half of the mysteries of the heavenly book inscriptions. Ouyang Long was silent for a few seconds, and said, perhaps I still need some time. With father's profound knowledge, you should be able to comprehend it very soon, write a heavenly book, and take over the position of Heavenly Book Pavilion's manager from Ji Lin's hands. That's natural, otherwise our 10 million Jinin coins would have been spent in vain. Ouyang Bao said. Ouyang Hu squinted his eyes at the side, and said, during tonight's banquet, Lin Muyu actually used a clumsy tool embryo and spirit powder to write a top-quality human book. It's really strange, I keep feeling that this person has too many secrets that we don't know. Father, do you think this god-slaying seal's tool embryo shield could be Lin Muyu's work? After all, we have not been able to find out when the Purple Flower Merchant Guild received the goods. You're saying that Lin Muyu is a divine sealing master? Ouyang Ping was startled, and said, absolutely impossible. Not to mention that divine sealing masters need time to temper themselves, just the god-slaying seal's illustrations have already been lost on the continent for 1,000 years. Even a sealing aristocratic family like the Wei family could not find the illustrations of the god-slaying seal and the divine governing seal, let alone Lin Muyu, who is obsessed with military power. Ouyang Bao said angrily, I think so too, Lin Muyu was only able to write a top-quality human book by accident. Ouyang Long laughed, third brother seems to have no good impression of this Lin Muyu. Could it be because the Tang Xiaoxi that third brother likes also happens to like Lin Muyu? Ouyang Bao instantly blushed and said, big brother, don't make fun of me. Ouyang Ping said lightly, Bao, fighting for a moment is just a boorish man after all. You have to remember, calm your heart. If you can write a heavenly book grade inscription, you can enter the ranks of the Heavenly Book Pavilion's heavenly scholars. At that time, father can also go to the Seven Seas King Tang Lan to propose for you. Tang Xiaoxi is a princess, after all, you have to listen to the elders when it comes to marriage. Marrying Tang Xiaoxi as a heavenly scholar is what you should do. If you really like Tang Xiaoxi, work hard instead of being jealous. Ouyang Bao cupped his fists and said, yes, father. Bao knows what to do. Ouyang Ping did not speak again. He placed his palm on the shield and immersed his mind into the powerful god-slaying seal again. At midnight, it began to snow in the deep winter. This was the first snow in Lanyan City this winter. Huge snowflakes drifted down from the sky. Creak, the door of the rear hall of Zhe Tian Palace was pushed open. There was a wisp of warmth inside, but it was cold outside. Lin Muyu tightened the belt of her cloak, blew a breath of hot air into her palm, and said with a smile, it's snowing. Qin Yin crossed her arms in front of her chest to ward off the cold, but it made her figure more exquisite and attractive. She said with a smile, it's really snowing. It's so cold outside. Brother Yu, why don't you not go back to the camp tonight? You can sleep in Zhe Tian Palace. There's an empty room next to my room. It's already prepared for you and Xiaoxi. No need. Lin Muyu brushed off the snow on her shoulder and said, the weather is not good tonight. I'm worried that there will be something that needs me in the camp. You and Xiaoxi should sleep early. I still have to be busy for a while. Oh. Qin Yin nodded her head with some disappointment. The loneliness in her beautiful eyes made one feel sorry for her. Lin Muyu could not help but smile. She turned around and hugged Qin Yin. She kissed Qin Yin on the cheek and said, Xiao Yin is now the emperor. You have to be strong. I can't stay by your side all the time. That's because I want to end the war as soon as possible. After the demon race and Iha country are destroyed, you can just give me a random title and I can marry you. Really? Qin Yin's pretty face was flushed. She was a little excited, but she did not dare to show it because of the reserved and shy nature of a young girl. She just nodded and said, then, are you really leaving tonight? Yes. All right then. Qin Yin turned around and took out an umbrella from the rear hall. She handed it to him and said, the snow is getting heavier. Be careful on the road. Yes, don't worry. I'm leaving. Yes. Opening the umbrella, Lin Muyu, dressed in white robes, disappeared into the curtain of snow. Only when his figure was completely out of sight did Qin Yin turn around and enter the room in Zai Tian Hall. She instructed, 20 people patrol at night. Yes. Qin Yen cupped his fists outside and said, this subordinate understands. Rustle, 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 the cold wind blew against her face. Lin Muyu's boots stepped on the snow with every step. When she arrived outside of Zai Tian Hall, she discovered that Wei Chou and Bai Yin were waiting with 50 Longdan Army camp cavalry in the resting hall. Commander, you're out? Wei Chou had a weathered face as he said with a smile, I thought you would be resting in Zai Tian Hall tonight. Then Bai Yin and I will go back first. Lin Muyu glared at him and was actually speechless. She said, let's go back to the camp. Yes. Everyone got on their horses and left the square of Zai Tian Hall in the blink of an eye, heading for Skyspan Street. It was late at night and there were not many people on the street. Only the sound of the cavalry's hooves could be heard in the wind and snow. Lin Muyu held Snowtreader's reins. King's fighting flames surrounded him. At this time, a few people in black robes slowly walked through the snowy night in the distance. The two parties brushed past each other. Not long after, Lin Muyu suddenly turned around and watched the figures of this group of people disappear from Skyspan Street. He could faintly feel a rather familiar aura through the spirit pulse art. He couldn't help but frown. Commander, what's wrong? Wei Chou asked. Don't you feel that these people are a bit strange? Lin Muyu said. Oh. Wei Chou narrowed his eyes and said, Commander's words make me feel that something is wrong. These people are dressed very luxuriously, but they are actually not riding on horses or carriages. Moreover, they seem to be in a hurry. This doesn't make sense. Lin Muyu said, moreover, their bodies are brimming with a faint aura, the aura of the power of heaven and earth. The power of heaven and earth? Wei Chou was stunned. Commander, what do you mean? These people have heavenly book weapon embryos on them. What? Wei Chou was shocked. Didn't Her Highness the Empress already issue an edict? All heavenly book weapon embryos must be stored in the heavenly book pavilion, and personal carrying is prohibited? Yes. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and said, let's follow them. We can't get too close. Don't let them discover us. Yes. In the snowy night, the howling of the cold wind in Lanyan City covered the sound of the horses' hooves. When Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, and the others followed the group of people to the north gate of Lanyan City, they saw the flickering torches in the distance. These people were chatting with the guards of the city. Not long after, the guard ordered the small gate to be opened and these people were released. Go. Lin Muyu spurred her horse forward with Wei Chou and the others. Immediately, the guard and the group of imperial guards were shocked. When Lin Muyu lifted her cloak and revealed the commander's military insignia, the guard's face immediately turned ashen. So it's... Commander, what's the matter? Get out of the way. Lin Muyu's eyes were cold as she shouted, we want to leave the city. But Commander, dang. The star's sword was unsheathed, and the king's fighting flame lingered around the blade. Lin Muyu said coldly, get out of the way or die. Yes, open the door. The small door opened again, and Lin Muyu led the 50 elites of the Longdan army camp out. However, the 7 or 8 people did not walk on the main road. Instead, they directly entered the forest on the side of the road. Lin Muyu followed the energy waves from the spiritual pulse technique and chased after them. Soon, she found traces of these people. Go, capture them. Wei Chou shouted loudly. I want them alive. The few people in the snow also noticed the pursuers and quickly turned around. One of them roared angrily, damn it, it's this group of dogs of the Empire again. Kill them for me. Bastards. They all pulled out their swords. Lin Muyu jumped off her horse and stepped on the whirling cold wind. The pressure of the Holy King Realm expert instantly descended, causing the two men in black at the front to kneel on the ground and lose the ability to resist. However, the people at the back were not crushed by the pressure of the Holy Realm. The surface of their bodies glowed with a faint yellow light, resisting the pressure of the Holy Realm. They had the Earth Book on them. "Everyone, be careful," Lin Muyu shouted. She had already swung her cosmic sword at the person at the front. Under the light of the cosmic sword, the person's face turned pale. He pulled out a saber from his waist. The faint golden divine runes on the saber soared into the sky. He shouted angrily, "Since we can't escape, we'll kill as many as we can. Come on, fire." A ray of light suddenly fell on his saber from the sky. The force of heaven and earth was activated. Judging from the intensity of the light, it was a mid-grade Earth Book of the Law of Fire. Boom! Flames fell from the sky and instantly swept over a radius of nearly 100 meters. Lin Muyu was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. She opened her hand and summoned a gourd wall with a radius of several meters to protect herself. However, the group of Longdan army camp soldiers behind her screamed in pain. Most of them were affected by the power of the Earth Book. Bastard! Lin Muyu was exasperated. Her figure flashed past, and a head flew into the air. Right in front of her, another man in black raised a broadsword. He was also activating the power of the Heavenly Book. Moreover, it was also an earthy yellow Earth Book. It was a low-grade Earth Book. However, just before the force of heaven and earth was activated, Lin Muyu used falling star steps to kill him. She swung her cosmic sword and cut off the man's arm. The light of the sword danced wildly. The rest of the people were killed before they could activate the power of the Heavenly Book. Behind them, among the dozens of Longdan army camp soldiers that Lin Muyu had brought with her, the ones with lower cultivation were burned to ashes. On the other hand, Bai Yin, Wei Chou, and the others with higher cultivation had only expended a lot of combat energy to resist the impact of the mid-grade Earth Book. "Search for all the embryos of the Heavenly Book," Lin Muyu said calmly. "Inform the Imperial Guard Commander Feng Jixing to bring his men here." "Yes." Chapter 504. The cold wind blew at the torches, causing them to flutter. The forest had already been completely surrounded by the Imperial Army. Feng Jixing looked at the corpses of the Longdan army camp soldiers and frowned. He was so angry that the veins on his face were bulging. Zhang Wei, who was on duty tonight? Zhang Wei cupped his fists. The centurion of the 4th Legion's 7th Battalion, Lu Darren. "Milord," he accepted 3,000 gold notes, so he secretly opened the side gate and let these people leave the city. "Execute Lu Darren. All the Imperial Army soldiers under him will be fined 3 months of salary." "Yes." On the side, Wei Chou and Bai Yin were holding trays filled with weapon embryos. There were swords, sabers, shields, bracers, metal boots, and so on. Lin Muyu checked the injuries of the injured soldiers and stood up to say to Chu Yao, "Sister Chu Yao, I'll leave these soldiers to you. You must save them. Try not to lose an arm or a leg. Otherwise, they'll be crippled." Chu Yao's beautiful face showed a trace of fatigue. She had already treated 7 soldiers who were seriously injured. Lin Muyu squeezed her hand with heartache. "It's been hard on you, it's fine." Chu Yao faintly smiled. "I am the Spirit Medicine Division's Great Deacon. This is originally my duty. You, go take care of your own matters. Come see me in a bit." Lin Muyu turned and went to Feng Jixing. Meanwhile, Feng Jixing looked at the embryos in silence. "How is it?" Feng Jixing asked. Lin Muyu frowned. 17 people died in the Longdan army camp, and 21 are seriously injured. A mid-grade earth tome caused us to lose so many people. How hateful. Feng Jixing patted his shoulder and said, "You, calm down first and quell your anger. This matter must be investigated from the beginning. What's there to investigate? Lin Muyu said, the weapons in their hands are all weapons and shields produced in Lanyan City, and they call us the Empire's dogs. It's obvious that they are from the Iha Kingdom. How many people in the world can write a middle-grade Earth book? Other than the clan heads of a few aristocratic families in the Heavenly Tome Pavilion, I'm afraid there's no one else. Wei Chou cupped his fists and said, General Feng, these aristocratic families sold the powerful spiritual tomes and tomes of the earth to the rebels of Iha Nation. This is clearly an act of treason. General Feng, please investigate the Heavenly Book Pavilion thoroughly. Heavenly Book Pavilion. Feng Jixing clenched his fists and sighed. I'll investigate thoroughly, but we can't be too hasty. The Heavenly Book Pavilion is too sensitive. If we make a big fuss, I'm afraid we'll lose many talents. This is also something that Your Highness doesn't want to see. So my people died in vain? Lin Muyu said in a low voice, Brother Feng, if you're not going to investigate, I'll do it myself. You. Don't be rash. I'm not being rash. It's just that we can't tolerate traitors. Lin Muyu gritted her teeth and said, I don't care which of the 4 aristocratic families sold the Heavenly Book to the Iha Kingdom. As long as I find out who did it, I'll definitely teach them a lesson. Feng Jixing asked, then what do you plan to do? Lin Muyu immediately ordered, Wei Chou, return to the camp immediately and mobilize the 1st Legion's 10,000 iron cavalrymen. Surround the Heavenly Book Pavilion at night. Prepare the arrow boxes and crossbows. If they want to use the Heavenly Book to resist, shoot them to death. Wei Chou flipped over and mounted his horse. I'll do it right away. Looking at Wei Chou's disappearing figure, Feng Jixing's face was ashen. He said, the Heavenly Book Pavilion is guarded by 5,000 Imperial Guards. Are you going to attack them? Then just withdraw 5,000 Imperial Guards. I'm going to investigate the Heavenly Book Pavilion at night. Brother Feng, you can come with me. I believe that the aristocratic families in the Heavenly Book Pavilion won't dare to act recklessly. All right. Feng Jixing nodded and asked, do we need to go to Her Highness to ask for an edict? No need. Xiao Yin is asleep. Let her have a good sleep. Everything happened so suddenly. Let's make a decision first. All right, let's go. Late at night, the sound of horse hooves could be heard on the streets of the imperial capital. The snow was getting heavier. Countless soldiers from the Dragon Courage Legion appeared around the Heavenly Book Pavilion with torches connected together. From afar, the soldiers from the Longdan army camp drew their bows and aimed at the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Any slight movement would cause a massacre. Bang! With a heavy kick, Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion side by side. Behind them, the densely packed soldiers from the Longdan army camp quickly surrounded the courtyard of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Their swords were unsheathed, and rows of sword lights shone coldly under the illumination of the torches. Who's there? Inside the Heavenly Book Pavilion, a group of Imperial Guards rushed over with their weapons. However, they saw Feng Jixing's determined face. All Imperial Guards, withdraw. Feng Jixing raised his commander's token and ordered. Yes, Commander. The 5,000 Imperial Guards left the Heavenly Book Pavilion in the blink of an eye. However, the steward and the others in the Heavenly Book Pavilion were all alarmed. Ji Lin, who was wearing a white robe, walked over with Ji Shang and the others. Soon after, the people from the Lu residence, Ouyang residence, and Prince Zhong residence also appeared in the plaza. The snow was heavy, but no one was sleepy. Looking at the countless Dragon Courage Legion soldiers with their swords drawn, they knew that something big must have happened. Ji Lin quickly walked forward and cupped his fists respectfully. Marquis Yunling, Marquis Yunzhong, the 2 marquises came to the Heavenly Book Pavilion in the middle of the night. I wonder what happened. Lin Muyu took a saber embryo from Wei Chou's hands and said, the middle-grade earth book on this embryo came from the Heavenly Book Pavilion, right? Ji Lin was stunned. Isn't this a 6-ring saber? Why is it in the hands of Marquis Yunling? I will have to ask you this. Lin Muyu said indifferently. Her Highness the Empress had already ordered that all of the embryos in the Heavenly Book Pavilion must be stored in the warehouse and wait for the Ministry of War's deployment. However, these dozen or so embryos with spirit books and earth books inscribed on them appeared in the hands of a group of Iha Nation rebels. Steward Ji Lin, do you know what happened? As he spoke, he slowly raised the six-ringed saber. The light on it dimmed. After activating the power of heaven and earth once, the earth book needed around 10 days to recover its spiritual power. Furthermore, an earth book could only be used 5 times in a lifetime. Although the spiritual power on this six-ringed saber was dim, one could still see the earthy yellow color of the power of heaven and earth. It was undoubtedly the earth book. Lin Muyu said in a low voice. This middle-grade earth book was activated and killed a total of 17 people from the Dragon Courage Legion. Who should I find to settle these 17 lives? Ji Lin's body trembled. Only now did he realize the seriousness of the situation. He hurriedly cupped his fists and said, Commander Yu, I don't know anything about this, but this six-ringed saber did come from this old man. I will definitely investigate this matter. There's no need. Feng Jixing stepped forward and said indifferently, We are here today to investigate this matter. Guards, who is the person who stored the heavenly book? Bring him here. In the crowd, a short and fat man scrambled forward and said, Lord Commanders, I really have nothing to do with this matter. I am only responsible for storing the artifact embryos in the warehouse. I don't know anything else. Take out the inventory. Lin Muyu said. Yes. He quickly took out an account book. Lin Muyu glanced at it. In the past half a month, the Heavenly Book Pavilion had stored a total of 14 local books, 71 spiritual books, and 224 personal books. She quickly found the fire-type middle-grade Earth Book embryo in the Earth Book's inventory. There was no doubt that it was the six-ringed saber, but there was only the inventory record. Why did the embryos disappear without a trace? Lin Muyu asked coldly. The fatty repeatedly kowtowed on the ground. I don't know. Lin Muyu could not help but laugh. Guards, drag this fatty away and behead him. I want to see if he knows. Yes. 2 soldiers from the Longdan army camp stepped forward and grabbed the fatty's arms. Suddenly, the fatty's face turned green. He had never seen such a scene. His pants were instantly wet. He knelt on the ground with a pale face and begged for mercy. Commander Yu, I know. Just last night, the chief of the Ji residence, Lord Ji Zhao, went to the warehouse and took a batch of weapon embryos. I didn't dare to ask too much, Ji Zhao. Feng Jixing's expression turned cold. Where is Ji Zhao? Come out. Among the crowd, a man with a pale face slowly walked out and knelt on the ground. He was wearing a luxurious leather robe and his hair had already turned white. He smiled at Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing and said, Don't investigate anymore. I did it. I sold the 9 spiritual books and 3 local books just to get some money to spend. Lin Muyu could not help but laugh. Some money? How much did you get for these weapon embryos? They are all here. Ji Zhao took out a pile of gold notes from his pocket and threw them into the snow. They were all 100,000 gold notes each. From the looks of it, there were at least 10 million gold notes. Iha country was really rich. They were actually willing to spend so much money on these heavenly books. On the side, Ji Lin's face was pale. He cupped his hands and bowed to Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing. Commanders. Ji Zhao is this old man's cousin. He has been loyal to the empire for many years. I hope that the 2 commanders can let him go. This old man only has this one cousin. Lin Muyu went forward to help Ji Lin up and said, Lord Steward, this matter has nothing to do with you. You don't have to plead for him. General Feng and I will handle this properly and hand Ji Zhao over to the Empress. I hope you can supervise the Heavenly Book Pavilion in the future and don't let this kind of thing happen again. Yes. Thank you, Commander Yu. Ji Lin looked sad. Ji Zhao and the gold notes were handed over to the people of the Fire Sparrow Division and then handed over to the Empress. The snow was getting heavier and heavier, making a rustling sound as it landed on the cloak. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing led their horses and walked on the streets of Zhe Tian Palace. Is this the end of this matter? Feng Jixing asked. Yes. Lin Muyu nodded, wanting to say something but hesitating. Feng Jixing laughed. You should be able to see it too, yes. Lin Muyu said in a low voice, if it wasn't for Ji Lin's support, Ji Zhao wouldn't have done such a big thing. However, the Empire needs people like Ji Lin to take charge of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, so we can only turn a blind eye. This time, we punished Ji Zhao as a warning to the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Yes. Feng Jixing nodded heavily. Unknowingly, a few years had passed. Feng Jixing had witnessed Lin Muyu's growth. From a silly boy who only knew how to use brute force to the swift and decisive commander of the Dragon Courage Legion, Lin Muyu was gradually transforming into a true famous general of the Empire. Chapter 505. The next day, Qin Yin ordered Ji Zhao to be put under house arrest for 20 years as punishment. In addition, the Heavenly Book Pavilion's manager, Ji Lin, was fined 6 months' salary for his incompetence. The 3 deputy managers, Qin Yong, Ouyang Ping, and Lu Yan, were all fined 3 months' salary. She also ordered Su Yu, the commander of the Qin Dragon Army, to go to the Heavenly Book Pavilion every 7 days to supervise the collection of heavenly tomes. It was also because of this small incident that Qin Yin, the Empress, gained a lot of control over the Heavenly Book Pavilion. In the afternoon, in the Longdan army camp, Lin Muyu placed the tool embryos one by one. He then took out his spiritual pen and opened the Fuxi Heavenly Book to the side. He began to study the other 7 divine texts. Among them, the one that interested him the most was the Heavenly Book of the Law of Life. The Fuxi Heavenly Book also recorded a series of keywords regarding the recovery of life. There were even some oracle bone inscriptions that Lin Muyu did not recognize. He had to study them carefully: life, XXXXX, warm current, green, XXXXX, melt, XXXXX, recovery, XXXX. It was conceivable that if he could write a high-level Heavenly Book of the Law of Life and use it in the casualty barracks during times of war, it would save a lot of manpower. Thus, he began to trace the outline of the divine text and studied it step by step. The spiritual pen was filled with mystic copper powder and he wrote the divine text on an exquisite shield. The mystic copper powder slowly seeped into the shield and produced a trace of dark force. Lin Muyu held the spiritual pen in his hand and felt a giant pen descending from the sky in his eye. The golden light exploded. He had already entered the realm of the holy pen, Amaterasu. However, after writing all the divine text, he did not enter any state of mind. This tool embryo could be considered broken. After writing 7 or 8 shields consecutively, his arm unconsciously became sore. Writing divine text was very exhausting. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Bai Yin said from outside, "Commander, Sir Qin Xiling from the weapon department of the Dragon Courage Army has sent someone to invite you to the mountain. He said that there has been progress in the research of the magic crystal cannon." All right. In her excitement, Lin Muyu immediately threw away the shield in her hand and put on her armor. She led Bai Yin, Wei Chou, and nearly 100 light cavalrymen of the valiant Dragon Legion out of the city, heading straight for the mountain. Half of the mountain was about 5 kilometers away from Lanyan City. Because the magic crystal cannon was a secret research project, it couldn't be known by others. Moreover, it was extremely powerful, so Qin Xiling moved the research site to the foot of the mountain. When Lin Muyu and the others arrived, they saw a group of soldiers from the Longdan army camp patrolling from afar. The research site was under martial law, and normal people couldn't get close. Of course, as the commander of the valiant Dragon Legion, Lin Muyu naturally went straight in. At the foot of the mountain, the withered grass had been trampled out of shape. The surrounding snow had not melted yet, but Lin Muyu could see Qin Xiling sweating profusely as he adjusted a black heavy cannon with a group of technical officials from the Ministry of Works. When she saw the heavy cannon, Lin Muyu could not help but be dumbfounded. The cannon barrel was at least 10 meters long, and the cannon base was even bigger, comparable to 3 or 4 armored vehicles. Could this big guy really be used? Lord Commander is here, an official reminded. Qin Xiling hastily turned around and saluted, saying, "The magic crystal cannon is starting to show results." "Oh?" Lin Muyu asked with a smile, "What kind of progress?" "You will know when you see it." Qin Xiling picked up a small red flag, pointed it at the mountain range in the distance, and said, "Aim, straight ahead, fill the cannon." "Yes." A few soldiers from the Longdan army camp carried a black ball and filled it into the cannon. Then, they filled in a round object made of black beech powder, and with a dang sound, the cannon was closed. Lin Muyu couldn't help being speechless. The principle of this double kick was too simple and crude. However, from the looks of it, it must have taken a lot of effort to forge this huge cannon. In this era where technology wasn't developed, it was already very rare to be able to do this. In the entire continent, probably only someone like Qin Xiling could make this kind of weapon. "Prepare the fire." Qin Xiling raised his arm. "Yes." A soldier picked up a torch. "Fire, release." When the torch got close to the fuse on the cannon, it immediately ignited with a "hwala" sound. Lin Muyu couldn't help but jump and unconsciously took a step back, as if she was afraid that this huge cannon would explode. Qin Xiling saw this and said, "Don't worry, even though the cannon exploded twice, it was because it was overheated. It won't happen again now." At this time, with a pang sound, the black beech powder ball inside the cannon exploded. With a strong propelling force, the magic crystal cannon with the storage crystal was sent out. Wang! The magic crystal was completely wrapped in the metal ball and directly flew into the distance. The purple lightning power in the storage crystal was faintly visible, but it was clearly not enough to detonate the magic crystal cannon. With a pang sound, the magic crystal cannon fell among the rocks at the foot of the mountain and rolled more than 10 meters away, but it didn't move at all. "What's going on? Is it a squib?" Lin Muyu asked. Qin Xiling shook his head, "No, let's wait a little longer." After a full 10 seconds, the energy around the magic crystal cannon kept jumping. Finally, with a pang sound, it directly erupted into a mushroom cloud that soared into the sky. The biting cold energy shockwave reached nearly 100 meters, destroying the rocks and plants as if they were dry weeds and rotten wood. The resulting shockwave came head-on, blowing the cloaks of Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, Bai Yin, and the other generals. Such a strong destructive power. Wei Chou was dumbstruck. Bai Yin also stood there dumbstruck, muttering, "Such a strong weapon, what are we still cultivating for? With these weapons, we can already unify the continent." Qin Xiling smiled with gratification. "It exploded. No, it's still not enough." Lin Muyu shook her head. "The explosion time is too long. It took so long for it to explode. I'm afraid that people with slightly higher cultivation would be able to quickly move out of the radius of the explosion. The power is indeed enough. Moreover, this magic crystal cannon doesn't have any calibrations at all. The accuracy of the cannon is equal to 0, and the killing power is negligible." Qin Xiling couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He cupped his fists and said, "Milord, this subordinate has really tried his best." What Milord has said, Xiling has already thought of it, but it's too difficult. Even if Milord gave us the blueprints, we still have to study it for many days and nights before we can improve it once. The explosion time can be shortened by increasing the purity of the storage crystal. As for calibration, Xiling still needs to continue studying the trajectory of the magic crystal cannon before we can improve it. Lin Muyu patted Qin Xiling's shoulder and said with a smile, "As for the magic crystal cannon project, I'll completely rely on Xiling. As long as you can improve the magic crystal cannon to the point where it can be used in battle, you will be the #1 hero of the Qin Empire, even more outstanding than the contributions of commanders like me and Big Brother Feng." Moreover, I promise you, as long as you can improve the magic crystal cannon to the point where it can be used in battle, I'll go to Her Highness Yan Yin and ask her to confer you the title of Duke. Even conferring you the title of King is not a difficult matter. After all, you have the Qin bloodline. Qin Xiling's face was full of surprise. Really, my lord? When have I ever lied to you? Lin Muyu laughed loudly. However, the research of the magic crystal cannon must be carried out in secret, especially the blueprints and so on. We can't let outsiders know, understand? Yes, the research of the magic crystal cannon has always been carried out in secret. Don't worry. Qin Xiling laughed and said, this afternoon, the valiant Dragon Legion scouts hunted some wild rabbits halfway up the mountain. I ordered people to stew them in a soup pot. Since my lord has come, let's eat dinner together. Okay. As a result, they stayed at the magic crystal cannon research base to eat dinner. When night fell, Qin Xiling ordered a thick cloth to cover the entire fort, and then cooked a pot of rabbit meat in the camp. Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, Bai Yin, and the others sat around the table, drinking wine and eating meat without a problem. When they were half full, Qin Xiling cupped his fists and said, my lord, the research funds for the magic crystal cannon are almost used up. The iron we use to smelt the magic crystal cannon is the hardest 1,000-year profound iron. Normal iron cannot withstand the high temperature when the cannon is fired, and there are many failures, so the expenditure is very large. I understand. Lin Muyu nodded. The magic crystal cannon was developed in secret and hadn't been approved by the Ministry of Revenue. This meant that Lin Muyu had to fork out the funds himself. However, he was willing. After all, doomsday weapon technology like the magic crystal cannon couldn't fall into the hands of Tang Lan, Su Muyun, or the hands of the demon race or the Iha nation. He had to be careful. Opening the universe bag, Lin Muyu took out a thick pile of gold notes. Each note was worth 100,000 gold coins, the 10 million gold coins from selling the god-slaying seal. She slowly placed the 100 gold notes on the table and said solemnly, this money can only be used for the research of the magic crystal cannon. Xiling, do you understand? Qin Xiling nodded heavily and said, don't worry, my lord, I won't touch a single copper coin. I'll directly hand it to the valiant Dragon Legion's secretary for registration. Every expenditure will be recorded in detail, my lord can be at ease. I trust you. After handing over the 10 million gold coins, Lin Muyu sighed. She didn't even have the mood to drink anymore. Her headache now was how to get more money to research the magic crystal cannon. From the looks of it, if she wanted to improve the magic crystal cannon to the point where it could be used on the battlefield, she would have to spend at least 100 million gold coins. Even if she succeeded in improving the magic crystal cannon, she would still need a large sum of money to continue smelting more magic crystal cannons. Conservatively speaking, she would need to spend at least 200 million gold coins to make the magic crystal cannon technology dominate the entire continent. However, if she could really unify the continent, what was 200 million gold coins? Chapter 506. In the Green Valley, birds flew and butterflies danced. It was a scene of beauty. Dense horse hooves spread out from the valley. Numerous human armies gathered and moved slowly. A battle of over 100,000 people was about to begin. Attack! The general at the front pulled out his long sword and roared at the sky. The sound of horse hooves became intense. The cavalry attacked while the infantry pushed forward. In a blink of an eye, the valley was drowned in blood and killing. Shouts surged into the sky as the two armies clashed. Just as the battle was in full swing, a person in the battle formation suddenly raised a longsword high up. The golden divine characters on the blade of the sword released a dense indigo light that soared into the sky. This was the power of heaven and earth triggered by a high-grade heavenly tome. In the next moment, numerous hurricanes formed in the air, turning into sharp blades that sliced the enemy cavalry. Within a few hundred meters, screams could be heard. Even the heavy armor was unable to block that sharp storm. One after another, more and more battle generals activated the power of the heavenly tomes. One by one, the earthly tomes, the heavenly tomes, and even the divine tomes were leading this battle. The canyon was already filled with blood. Magic crystal cannons, prepare. On the mountain range, bushes and branches were moved away, revealing the pitch-black cannons below. In the next moment, bang bang bang, sounds rang out incessantly, and purple mushroom clouds erupted in the battle. Countless pitiful soldiers were torn to shreds by the power of the magic crystal cannons, and some soldiers were even directly burned to ashes, turning into dust that fell to the ground. Ah! Lin Muyu woke up. So it was a dream, but the killing scenes in the dream were so real. I rubbed my temples. I had drunk too much last night, otherwise, I wouldn't have had such a nightmare. This dream was just too real, so real that it felt like it was really happening. Moreover, Lin Muyu knew that once the magic crystal cannons were completed, along with the appearance of magic crystal cannons and the appearance of high-grade heaven books, the dominance of martial arts would be challenged. Even God realm experts wouldn't be able to protect themselves from the terrifying power of the magic crystal explosion. That might not be the case. He got up and washed up. What he had to do in the morning was simple. He continued to study the heavenly book. Lin Muyu took out a thin sword and started writing on it. His spiritual sense slowly seeped into the sword and he relaxed his body. Naturally, he entered the realm of the holy brush, Amaterasu. This time, he used dark silver powder as the material. Silver runes slowly appeared on the sword, flames from the endless purgatory. Heavenly flames descended from the heavens, burning away all the darkness, dancing with endless destruction, flames devouring the heavens. In the blink of an eye, when Lin Muyu finished writing the last rune, the image of a sky full of raging flames suddenly appeared in her mind with a buzz. Being in the middle of it, she felt the boundless heat and destruction. The law of fire was the most destructive and destructive law of the 8 great laws. She could feel the searing pain very vividly. The state of mind had already appeared. Whoosh! A ray of light shot into the sky. It was an orange ray of light. Spirit book. And judging from the intensity of the color, it should be a middle-grade spiritual book. Lin Muyu was overjoyed. Finally, he could become a book again. At this time, the sword in his hand was no longer an ordinary sword. It was a sword with a middle-grade spiritual book in it. A middle-grade spiritual book could be activated 7 times in a lifetime. Each time it was activated, it needed about 7 days to recover its spiritual energy. It was stronger than the human book, but weaker than the earth book. Overall, it was already very good. At the same time, the moment the book was completed, Lin Muyu felt that the battle energy in his body was greatly depleted. Although the heavenly book used the power of heaven and earth, it had to be guided by the strength of the inscriber. Therefore, inscribing a heavenly book was not only a mental task, but also a physical one. Lin Muyu sat cross-legged as strands of Fushi's divine power slowly circulated around his body. He was using the heavenly book's mental cultivation method to modify the purity of the spiritual energy in his body. The incomplete scroll of the dragon forging bone tempered one's bloodline and battle energy. Now that Lin Muyu had stepped into the Holy King realm and had achieved the initial success of the Divine Legacy realm, he could be considered to have reached the peak of cultivation among his peers. According to the Fushi Heavenly Book's mental cultivation method, he did not use the king's battle flame but the spiritual energy in his body to write the heavenly book. The more vigorous and pure the spiritual energy, the higher the probability of activating the power of heaven and earth. This was the true meaning of Fushi's heavenly book. On the contrary, Fushi's heavenly book only gave the basic rules of the heavenly book's divine text. As for the specific divine text, it did not mention a single word. Just as Lin Muyu was practicing the heavenly book's mental cultivation method, the strand of Fushi's divine power in his body seemed to be attracted and lingered around the mental cultivation method's spiritual energy as if it was protecting him. Lin Muyu could not help but be stunned. Could it be that Fushi's divine power and the heavenly book's mental cultivation method were of the same origin? So, If he used Fuxi's divine power to write the heavenly book, what would the effect be? When he thought of this, he could no longer sit still. He quickly went to the table and took out a steel longsword. A row of heavenly book runes of the law of life flashed across his mind. Golden strands of Fuxi's divine power enshrouded his fingers. His mind wandered and he quickly wrote down a rune, life. The warm current from the firmament heaven realm, the green rebirth of all things, melting the world of ice and snow, the endless power brings the revival of life, saving the dying and healing the injured. The holy pen's Amaterasu state had appeared. The state of mind had also appeared. Lin Muyu's spiritual sense was immersed in a flourishing brocade. The heaven and earth were filled with the power of life. Lush plants were growing healthily and birds were flying in the sky. The endless power of life spread rapidly between the heaven and earth, dyeing the desert and the Gobi Desert with layers of green. Today was the second time he had completed a book. Swoosh! A ray of earthy yellow light shot up from the steel sword and directly shot through the main hall and into the 9 heavens. He did not know if others could see it. Moreover, according to the intensity of the light, the color was relatively dim. It should be a low-grade earthly book. This was enough. It was the earthly book, a realm that many heavenly books inscribers could not pursue in their entire lives. Buzz buzz, the divine runes on the steel sword glowed faintly and slowly enshrouded. Lin Muyu was extremely excited. This was an earthly book. No, he could not hold it in anymore. He had to see the power of this earthly book of the law of life. He quickly walked out of the room. Outside, the cold wind was blowing. It was the middle of winter. Everything in the courtyard had withered. The flowers and plants in the pots had long died. Not far away, an old banyan tree had also lost all its leaves. Its withered branches swayed slowly in the wind. There was no one around. Lin Muyu could not help but secretly laugh. With a light flip of his palm, the king's combat flame surged into the blade. With a single thought, the embryo of the earthly book was activated. In an instant, a green light shot up into the sky. Endless life energy surged in the surroundings. In the next moment, a miraculous scene occurred. The withered wood sprouted, and the hissing sound of growth could be heard. Moreover, the withered flowers and plants in the flower pots also slowly took root and pulled out their teeth. In an instant, they had grown into pots of beautiful flowers. The banyan tree also grew up gracefully. The entire courtyard was like spring, overflowing with the air of spring. It was a stark contrast to the cold winter outside. Oh my God, Lin Muyu was dumbfounded. How mysterious was the power of the earthly book. It could actually bring everything back to life. If this courtyard was filled with wounded soldiers, wouldn't their wounds heal as quickly as the flowers and plants? Too amazing. Looking down, the divine characters on the blade slowly dimmed. After the earthly book was written, it could be activated 5 times in its lifetime. This sword had already been used once, so there were still 4 more times. It would take around 10 days for it to completely recover the power of heaven and earth. Lin Muyu's heart was filled with joy. At this time, Wei Chou pushed open the door and entered. Seeing the green in the courtyard, his face turned green. Oh my God, what is going on? Lin Muyu raised the sword in her hand. The law of life. This is the embryo of the earthly book. Wei Chou was shocked. Commander, you can write the earthly book? Yes, it's not simple, right? Wei Chou's face was filled with ecstasy. It's not just not simple. There aren't many people in the entire Dragon's Courage army that can write a heavenly book, but the commander can actually write an earth book. I'm afraid that if the people in the heavenly book pavilion knew about this, they would be angered to death. Not only is commander's martial arts cultivation far above theirs, but even your comprehension of the heavenly book inscriptions is far above theirs. Oh right, why are you here? Her Highness Yin has summoned you. She said that it's about how to handle Ji Zhao's 10 million Jinin coins. Oh. Lin Muyu smiled happily. It seems that Xiao Yin is planning to give me some benefits. Then, Commander, let's hurry over. Wei Chou beamed. Okay, let's go. Lin Muyu placed the freshly made embryo of the earthly book into her Qingquan bag. Riding on Takshu, she brought Wei Chou, Bai Yin, and the others to Zhe Tian Palace. At the square outside Zhe Tian Palace, she saw another group of people. They were the people from the Lu residence in the Heavenly Book Pavilion. The three siblings, Lu Heng, Lu Feng, and Lu Ying, were all there. Lu Feng was holding a long brocade box in his hand. There must be some treasure in it. Lin Muyu used the spiritual pulse technique to explore from afar. She found that the item in the brocade box was emitting a faint power of heaven and earth. It seemed to be a finished embryo. Commander Yu, you've come to Zhe Tian Palace too? When Lu Ying saw Lin Muyu, her face was instantly filled with a happy smile. She was like a little girl who had a crush on her. She was shy, but she could not help but greet her. Lu Heng and Lu Feng were instantly displeased. However, Lu Ying was the apple of their father's eye, and she might not be willing to listen to her two brothers. Lin Muyu nodded and smiled. Her Highness has summoned me. Oh yes, why are the people from the Lu residence here at Zhe Tian Palace? Lu Ying beamed with joy. Second brother just finished writing a middle-grade earthly book this morning. It's a book about the law of light. He also heard that your Highness practices the law of light martial soul, so he specially came to present this middle-grade earthly book to you. I see. Lin Muyu smiled faintly and said, let's go in. Okay. Lu Ying was simple-minded and would not think of so many complicated relationships. Lu Feng was a natural genius. His innate talent in heavenly book inscriptions could be said to be the best in the empire. Furthermore, he had an elegant demeanor and had long been favored by the noble ladies in Lanyan City. However, the only person that Lu Feng seemed to be in love with was the Empress, Qin Yin. Although Lin Muyu was very confident that he would not lose to Lu Feng in terms of talent or martial arts, he was still somewhat uncomfortable when someone else coveted his girl. Wei Chou followed closely behind Lin Muyu with his hand on the hilt of his sword. He was only 5 meters away from Lu Feng. With such a short distance, Wei Chou was confident that he could pierce Lu Feng's throat in half a second before he could activate any heavenly book. However, Lin Muyu looked back at him with a slight reproach in his eyes. He could already see a trace of killing intent in Wei Chou. Wei Chou was also helpless. He grinned and removed his hand from the hilt of his sword. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.